Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as CEDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null.
Hello, everyone.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
What's up?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
How's it going?
And in this episode, we are going to be covering a Modern Horizons 2 / very mini Strixhaven set discussion, not review, because that's a meaningful difference apparently.
I mean,
so
okay.
No, we're
Yeah.
we're not going to be covering the full set of anything that's playable. We're only going to be talking about cards that we want to talk about. But that does go down, from the top end down to like the bottom end, but it's not comprehensive or anything. But yeah, before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode?
It's been a while since the last one.
I was gonna say I can say it's been a couple episodes since I've last been on. We had our special episode and guest episode, and so I was like, okay, well, I guess now it's got to shake off the rust.
Oh, I guess I've just been sort of stuck in the like guest episode and special episode loop, huh?
Yeah. Reed's stuck in the podcast and
Yeah,
just can't
dude.
get out.
Nathan, sorry, but Reed was stuck.
No. I was
Shaper, thanks for coming on, but Reed was stuck.
Oh man!
Imagine not apologizing to Taro. God, Morgan.
I
So
mean,
fucking
I
inconsiderate.
stopped the joke, but I would have.
Yeah, so I mean, for myself mainly, I've been ordering some new cards, brewing some decks, jamming some games, continuing to work on my Baral testing and refinement, and that is a slog. There are so many cards that I would like to test, and in order to test, you need a bunch of meaningful games. So yeah, that's
If
still
I
a
had-
grind.
If I had to describe Baral in a word, slog is a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll say I there's one funny anecdote. I opened a hand with like 3 lands and Thassa's Oracle and Paradigm Shift, and I went land Baral, land Thassa's Oracle, Paradigm Shift. I lost that game because people had open mana, but I was like, I just have to do it. I have to do it.
told
And
you I had the Pyroblast.
No, I couldn't not do it though. That way, next time when that situation comes up, I won't have to because I've already tried it once. But it's funny, Morgan or someone. I was like, "Would you take a turn 1 Urza win if you could?" Talking to our friend Keegan, and he's like, "Turn 1 and turn 3 are way different." And then Morgan was like, "To be fair, turn 3 is
Yeah.
Baral's turn 1." Yeah, no,
That's actually-
that was fun.
It is. I will say though, it's understandable how much of a slog it is to test cards in Brawl, because like once you get below the best like 50 cards in the deck, there's just such a wide range of like
Everything is
cards
so
that can
similar.
fill the rest,
And-
because they're all so bad, but they're all like around the same level of bad that you just have to test all of them.
Yeah.
And in like a 4 or 5 hour night of CEDH games, you can get 2. So
Yeah.
like, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
Brawl is the funniest CDH deck.
Yeah, dude, our
Confirmed.
listener hot take. Yeah, that is funny. Well, anyone else have anything they've been up to, or?
I have been playing a lot of games with a deck that I won't mention yet. But
Yet.
We'll
Wait,
get to
did
it
we
later in
put the
episode.
Strixhaven card in our discussion? 'Cause
No,
No,
we
we're
told
going
us
to
not
talk
to.
about it as a bundle.
kind
Spoiler alert.
of.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing a fair amount with Lyndon and Morgan and some of the QMTG crowd. Just testing deck, making it do things, hopefully. You know.
So how, dude, a Brawl and like trying to test decks into that meta is actually just.
It's actually
cancer
so
because-
rough because I'm done
not
testing
real
within the
testing,
first
yeah.
5 minutes, and then I have to wait like another hour for a game.
Hey, at least you get goldfishing. You get time to goldfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about Witherbloom Apprentice, right?
That's the
Oh,
one.
of
Yep.
course,
Mhm.
of course. Strixhaven All-Star. Yeah, cool. Anyone else, or shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Yeah,
Cool.
let's keep going.
Without further ado, let's jump into housekeeping. And in housekeeping, we always like to shout out our new patrons. And we have quite a few new patrons, which is awesome.
Yay.
We really appreciate it, guys. So thank you so much. So big shout outs to Stephen E,
Espen O.
Esper Lovegood.
Maximilian M.
and JC. thank you guys for the patron support. It means a lot, and you guys rock.
You really do rock.
Cool. Well, on to new developments, and then we can get into the topic at hand. So we have one new development here, and I guess Reed, this is your area.
Yep. So it could not yet be out potentially by the time that this episode comes out, but we should have had a new decklist database update by the time this episode comes out. So go check it out, or wait a couple days because it'll probably be out around that time anyway. Even if it's not by the time that we get this episode out. Yeah, I mean, I would just like to say thanks to all of our new reviewers because we brought on a whole new batch of reviewers, and they've been very helpful in giving us, a wider breadth of opinions on the decks and helping us just turn through our backlog. Because I'm fairly sure the set of submitted decks for this review cycle was something like 189 or something like that. So much appreciated.
So you all get to live without the subtext of, depending on how long it takes Morgan to edit this thing, there may or may not be a database update before this episode.
This is now initiating a race between me and Sinestra and Morgan to see who can get out the update / episode first.
Great.
Nice. Okay, so on to the main topic, which is our Modern Horizons 2 set discussion. So we're going to be covering the Strixhaven, a couple Strixhaven cards at the end, but obviously there's far fewer of them than the Modern Horizons stuff. So Modern Horizons 2, we're going to lead with some cards that we kind of structured it with our medium discussion cards, long discussion cards, and then lower discussion cards for like pet decks and stuff. So yeah, we'll start off on medium discussion. So I'll let Reed take this first card because
sure.
This feels like a U card.
So we got Unmarked Grave here, 1 and a black for a sorcery. Search your library for a non-legendary card. Put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle. So I mean, I think the obvious and like potentially only like real use of this currently is in Hulk decks. The non-legendary card sort of kills it for anything close to Razaketh or anything like that. It's sort of reasonable for World Gorger Dragon, but I feel like World Gorger Dragon at this point is being more and more hybridized with cats anyway. There's like the Venn diagram of World Gorger Dragon decks and Razaketh decks are like almost just like a circle inside of a circle at this point, I think. So pretty narrow use, but I think it's worth noting just as a card because, like Second Entomb effect opens up other strategies a bit more and gives you more stuff to work with in the event that you're playing a deck that just really wants an Entomb for some reason. I know Varels loves it just because Varels has always just wanted another Entomb that wasn't buried alive, so yeah, it's nice to have it.
So I'll say, because people have asked about this card in Gitrog, so I'll just kind of give my 2 cents on this now. So, we already run Entomb, and our main Entomb targets are Dakmor and Life from the Loam, so people are like, oh, well, obviously we want a second Entomb. And Entomb for 1 mana instant speed versus 2 mana sorcery speed, it actually is quite a big difference. The you don't really want this second Entomb because you can compare it to similar cards like Sylvan Scrying, where Sylvan Scrying can so Unmarked Grave would mainly just get Dakmor and Life from the Loam, which are fantastic. But if you're looking at Sylvan Scrying, you're able to get Dakmor, obviously. But then you can get things like Cavern of Souls, Bazaar, Baghdad, more mana or whatever. So the utility of something like Sylvan Scrying is much higher, and we're not even running Sylvan Scrying. So that's a good metric to use when comparing or when looking at something like Unmarked Grave.
And it's probably also more about like Unmarked Grave. The stuff that Unmarked Grave gets is only good post Gitrog, whereas like Sylvan Scrying also gets stuff that's good like before. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, no, but true.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm imagining this will make the cut in Muldrotha when I get around to, putting it in. But
true.
That seems good.
Seems
bit
not
of a combo.
bad.
Yeah, seems pretty sweet.
What about Chainer?
Most of the stuff you want to hit. I mean, I guess it finds news, but a lot of the stuff you want to hit in that deck is legendary.
Oh, actually, I know a deck that this is actually really good for as well. Arami.
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely not a bad one there. Especially with one of the new cards that we're going to run up into. It gets even better.
Dude,
Yeah.
Lyndon's
Yeah.
convinced that if he just says Arami, one day the deck will just appear fully formed in front of him.
Hey, I've got brews, but I mean, people have also brewed the deck before. But yeah. I've got it in my queue.
Stack.
At such a low priority that
It's a stack.
things
Maybe.
enter the queue in front of it faster than you.
Well, the thing is,
process
my
the
queue is not first in, first out. It's whenever
Yeah.
I feel like brewing.
It's a
So,
proprietary algorithm.
It's a heat.
Yeah. Cool. Next up,
Sure.
Morgan, Matt. Sure.
We can go back to the regular. I'll cover this. So, Regavan, Nimble Pilferer for 1 red, legendary creature, monkey pirate. So all the types we needed.
Great creature
what-
types.
Hey, man, it triggers Malcolm.
That's one hell of a trigger too.
Yeah.
So when it deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. And it has dash for 1 and a red, and it's a 2/1. So
So I
the
mean,
next,
I know the card says Ragavan, but it's Jack, right?
Well,
Renamed the monkey Jack.
true. Yeah. So I mean, this card people have been talking about a lot for Legacy and Modern a bit, but CDH. I was very confused. I was like, what are we doing with this in CDH? And then Reed made an
Pretty odd.
excellent point, and I'd
Yeah.
like him to reiterate it.
Well,
for-
sure.
for
So I mean,
our
just like
listeners.
so. First of all, at its base, if you can consistently connect with it, it's a mana dork plus extra, right? Because it makes a treasure every turn, which is already better than what mana dorks do, but also like you get to steal the top card of people's libraries. Which
Notably,
can
you can only
relevant.
cast it. You can't play
Yeah,
a
you
land.
could-
Yeah,
only
yeah, but I mean
cast.
that's already better than a mana dork, right? Like if you can
It's
if
all-
you can
if it
always
connects, yeah.
well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying is like if you can always connect with this, then it's a better mana dork, right?
The problem I have with it
even
is
if you
the
couldn't
connecting.
even if you couldn't take the top card of somebody's library, it's still a better mana
Yeah.
dork because making
Even-
treasures is
yeah.
better than tapping for mana.
even connecting twice, especially in some sort of turbo deck, like being able
Yeah.
to keep 2 treasures for later.
And so
is a lot better.
that's actually the place where I was telling Lyndon about like why this is going to see a lot of play in a lot of decks is because in a lot of turbo decks, like Lyndon was like, yeah, but like if you don't always connect with it, like it's sort of just like worse than a mana dork. And I made the point to Lyndon that like, yeah, but this is talking about decks that were already running shit like Blood Pet and Ornithopter and Memnite to like get their creature sack effects and just like have stuff around for
Yeah.
like timid attacks and stuff. So Ragavan
I'm
is
like-
already like infinitely better than any of those bodies.
Comparing it to Blood Pet and Ornithopter makes this seem insane.
Yeah.
Wow, this card's insane. How would they ever print something so much better than Ornithopter and Blood Pet? Yeah, that's
But yeah, I mean, like I feel like there's a lot of cases where you're going to be able to get attacks through, and like also there are a lot of decks that like won't block a 2/1 too. A lot of the time, I think. So yeah, I mean, like I
in
feel like
the
this
turbo inbred meta, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, not even that. Just like if you're not on a green deck, like, are you trading a Tymna
but,
for
I
this?
mean, there's
Probably not. Are you? Like I don't know.
Yeah. There's lots of like I mean Thrasios flop. You're never
Yeah, like
attacking
you're
two
not,
Thrasios
you're not
decks.
you're not blocking this with like an op agent or a hull breacher, right?
Lots
Like,
of fringe decks that,
Yeah.
that do just have 3 toughness commanders, but I mean the blocking a 2 power creature isn't always free as
yeah,
Tymna gets in for attacks
it's
often
not
enough.
it's not like completely free. It's not like
Yeah.
a sure thing. So I think that like it's actually very reasonable to test this in most red decks at this point
Yeah.
and just like see how it does.
If there's
Yeah.
anything I've learned from Tymna players, it's if there's 2 at the table, they just agree to attack each other.
Oh yeah.
So pretty
Classic
free.
banana bread, dude.
Oh god.
Which
It's
is
also
inside.
the dash is actually very relevant here as well
That one's for Keegan.
because the dash actually lets you just like get people on their top deck tutors. So like if somebody casts an imp seal, like without the dash, this would have to be already in play, and they just like wouldn't cast the imp seal if they couldn't block. But
It's a bit of a trick. I
with
suppose,
the
yeah.
dash, they can just like cast an imp seal on their turn or whatever, and then you just dash this in and hit them and take their thing.
That's pretty dope. Yeah.
So like
Okay,
definitely not
so that's-
insignificant. Yeah.
That's Ragavan, and then next up we've got Ignoble Hierarch. Morgan, you want
We
this,
sure
or-
do. This is a 0/1 Goblin Shaman that casts for a single green mana. It has Exalted and tap, add a black, red, or green. So this is what's crazy about this card is that it's only the second card with red color identity and Exalted. There was one
Oh,
in Modern
wow.
Horizons 1, and there have been none others. So like this is
Crazy.
really pushing the bound. Okay.
Yeah.
So this
Really-
is
really
basically
see- really
this is
see the
basically
horizons
Ragavan
here.
that doesn't need to connect, right?
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
So this is a Jund Noble Hierarch, which is, I mean, Noble Hierarch has been, arguably, people have gone back and forth. Maybe in EDH, Birds of Paradise is like more
Birds
clearly
gotta be
better, but in other formats, people have gone back and forth on like Birds versus Noble Hierarch as best mana dorks. I guess some people would argue for like Deathrite Shaman, but that's
DRS is banned, so like,
that's also not
Most
really
places.
that is
dork in
that
the
question has
same
been
way.
answered already.
Yeah,
It's a Planeswalker.
So it's the best, right?
I mean, you could exclude it from the category of mana dork, notably because it doesn't have a mana ability. But like, so Noble Hierarch and Birds are solid contenders for the best mana dork, and this is, I mean, in the colors, it's every bit as good as Noble Hierarch, and you could argue that these are better colors than the ones on Noble Hierarch. So yeah, this is just insane and adds like a huge amount of like it's just another in 3 and 4 color, like Jund or like Jund at a 4th color decks, just adds like another super consistent mana access dork.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just another thing for 5 color
Also,
decks.
his
That's
name is
chat.
Iggy, and he's the best.
I like Iggy. That's good.
Yeah, so you know how Bant players are always like, haha, I've got Noble Hierarch and you don't. Well,
Yeah.
now, non-Bant players have Ignoble Hierarch.
Cool. Next up, we've got Urza Saga, and that's the last one in this category. So Urza Saga is an enchantment land typed Urza Saga. So sagas, as a saga enters play, notably it's after your draw step, and this is something that not a lot of people realize. So that's, I know the phrasing is a bit weird, but that means at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase.
Which
essentially.
it really should just say at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase. But anyway.
Yeah. But it's relevant for this because it changes. It can change how you evaluate the card.
Wait,
So,
if you skip your draw step, does your saga not trigger?
Yeah, because it's still after your draw step, I think.
Okay,
That's
not,
don't
'cause-
trust
whatever,
any of
yes,
us on
yes.
this. None of us are judges. Just we're gonna
Go
move
figure
on.
that out for yourself. Yeah, so after your draw step, add a lore counter and sacrifice after 3. So the first chapter on the saga is Urza Saga gains tap, add a colorless mana. So notably, this effect will persist between all of the chapters of the saga.
And it happens as soon as the DTBs. So it's
Yes, as
basically
soon as
just a
the
color
DTBs,
land for the
it's
entire
already a
time.
colorless
untapped
land.
colorless land. Yeah.
Enchantment land.
Second chapter, Urza Saga gains 2 and tap, create a construct, which is the constructs that get +1/+1 for each artifact you control. And then the third chapter is search your library for an artifact card with mana cost 0 or 1. Put it onto the battlefield and shuffle. Notably, mana cost means it's not mana value.
Or
So you
CMC.
can't get something that's So you can't get artifact lands. You cannot get Lotus Bloom. That's the key thing there. So the one thing that I've been using to kind of compare this to for a lot of people is it's a lot like in some decks, not every deck. It's a lot like Gemstone Caverns, because I've been trying to convince people for this in Gitrog, and lots of the top frogs and people are convinced on this, but some of the other people still need to be convinced. But if you're drawing it later in the game, it's basically a colorless land. But if you open it on turn 1, this sets you up turn 3 immensely. So in Gitrog, for example, you're getting on turn 3, you're untapping, tapping this in your main phase before it sacrifices. It sacrifices, and you can go get something like a Jeweled Lotus if you want to just cast Gitrog with a bunch of extra mana, or a Mana Crypt, or a Soul Ring, or something. So that's kind of what Urza Saga can do, and it's just really good. It tends to be pretty good in low color decks. Yeah, the ability to just turn into a soul land later on is it's pretty awesome.
And I mean, also it
Also,
has a
card
lot of
structure.
You can go get LED in certain turbo decks, like
Yep.
have
Also,
access
notably
to that.
gets Skull Clamp and Coal, pretty nice.
Huge, very notably.
That's
Yeah,
huge,
massive. Yeah.
And it also gets I mean, like, it also just can get you things like It can get you like shitty artifact creatures if that's what you're into, but also like potentially gets you like a Grafdigger's Cage or just like other random 0/1 cost stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But think about it.
I
You
think
can
this
also
land is very
get the
good.
Soul Ring and then immediately use it to make a Construct.
Yep. Easy.
Can you even get Soul
Yeah.
Talisman? What
No,
is this?
Actually,
if you
wait,
get the Soul
Can't
Ring,
do
Morgan,
that,
it's
right? 'Cause
sacrificed
it dies.
already.
Yeah, it sacks itself.
No.
before.
The sacrifice is a trigger that happens after the chapter ability leaves the stack. I'm pretty sure.
Really? I don't
That's
I don't remember getting priority to flicker
weird
on
As
Arena.
shit.
Whatever.
Again,
Yeah,
don't
well-
trust us.
well,
We're not
if that matters,
judges.
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything to say?
Oh,
about
it's
Urza
just never
Saga?
mind. It's a state-based action. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what it seemed like on Arena, but
yeah, I mean, it's
I mean,
cute.
the second mode isn't like super relevant, although it can be relevant in Urza decks specifically. Flavor Win, huge.
I think
This
this
is
is
making
just
meters.
decent math.
this is very nice for low color decks that can afford the colorless land, and just like want to put a crypt into play on turn 3.
Yeah.
Or
I feel like it's the second ability is also just like conceivably relevant in any sort of like game that's stalled out, where like it's a land that comes with a free, like even if it comes with like a free 3/3, like that can actually be massive
Can be relevant.
in games where like
Well,
you
it
know,
can come with two.
potentially
If
things-
it comes with a 3/3,
Yeah,
it can come with
it
two
makes
4/4s if
tokens.
you want.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah, exactly. Or like if it comes with 2 4/4s, like that could make a huge difference in a game where either something like Timna draws are making the difference, or like, you know, it
Being able to
people
double
are
block something huge. Yeah.
being able to double block something huge, or like people are taking, you know, incidental damage from like crypts and pain lands, and it's like, hey, maybe if I can put like 12 damage on someone, that actually like can force a response.
Yeah, so we were talking about it being good in low color decks, and I think it's when I made the comparison to Gemstone Caverns in low color decks. In high color decks, they're very much different because a deck that would want to run Gemstone Caverns, when you open it, it's a colored source that accelerates you, whereas and then it's a colorless land if you draw it. So when you're drawing them in the later game, they're kind of equivalent, but when you're opening with them, you can actually be just stumbling if you're opening with an Urza Saga in a higher color deck, because you're not able to play something like a Thrasios or whatever on your turn
dork
2.
or like a double color
Yeah, exactly.
spell on turn 2 or whatever.
Cool. So next up, we've got our long form discussion.
These are basically
we
just
kind of got,
cards
like-
that are either really nuts busted or just warrant a fair amount of discussion.
So we kind of got like 3.5 here. Do you want to? Yeah, sure. We'll keep
Yeah.
this format. It's so first up, I guess Reed, you can take this.
Sure.
I mean, I can take it if you want to take
Yeah.
the second
Go for
one.
it. Yeah,
Reed,
yeah.
but-
Oh yeah, sure,
Go
sure,
for it,
sure.
Morgan.
the first one is Dauthi Voidwalker. It's a
Boo.
3/2 that casts for black. It has Shadow, and that's it. No, it has.
Hey, also its type line is relevant.
It's type. It is a Dauthi Rogue, which is relevant for.
Oh, wait, no. Oh no, I
those
guess it's
few
not. I
cards
was
they
thinking
care
ninja.
about.
I was thinking ninja, but then
I mean,
and then
Rogue
is
also
all
has
Edric.
some
is
number of things
Yeah.
they care about.
It's
it.
just
This
Edric, so
black
then it
card
wouldn't
is
matter, yeah.
great for Edric. I mean, it triggers
I mean, if you
Growl
Gilded
on
Drake it.
like Yuriko or whatever.
If you gilded dragon.
For like Yuriko decks that play.
Isn't there that
whatever
I
Rogue
lied. The
tribal
type line isn't
commander
relevant.
for
I lied.
blue-black?
Anyways, yeah, dude, it's a Dauthi. Of course, it's relevant.
Exactly.
If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it with a void counter on it.
So
and the last-
already just of
That's
note,
pretty
this
good.
is a
Wow.
one-sided, like it's a Leyline of the Void,
It's a
but
Leyline
on a
of the
2
Void, yeah.
CMC creature, which is like already very good, right? Like we're people are already
Unblockable
playing
2
Rest in
CMC.
Peace,
with
and that's not a
evasion
creature.
and decent power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and then it says tap, sacrifice Dauthi Voidwalker, choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so,
So-
fucking
Wow.
Are
dumb.
you sure it doesn't say pay it any mana for its
Spend.
cost? Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that was-
color or yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
God.
card is actually absurd. It's like a 2-mana hate bearer that's like already okay, just like as a hate bearer, and then you get to cast a spell for free from your opponents. Like, what?
At any time in
Yeah.
the turn. With
Even-
no restriction.
Even if
No,
this
well,
was...
the timing on the original
timing
card is
restriction still
restricted.
applies.
Yeah.
But it doesn't
Oh, sorry,
have
I
an
just mean, like,
activation
you can-
timing, yeah.
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 You can get a counterspell.
So, like, you can take, like, counter magic or, like, cast a Naws and instant speed for free out of somebody's graveyard or just...
Yeah,
it
there's
doesn't-
also another thing to note too is that this card is a card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. So if your Voidwalker comes down later than an opponent's previous Voidwalker, you can still access opponent's cards that were exiled to the original Voidwalker.
Or you can access previous of your own Voidwalker. Notable for, like,
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
with, like, Kenrith. So if you play, like, an early Voidwalker, like, rack up a bunch of stuff underneath it, and then, like, every turn you activate Voidwalker, activate Kenrith, get back Voidwalker, keep doing it every turn cycle. Like...
Yeah.
Or, like,
Oh
do
my
it multiple
goodness.
times a turn cycle with enough mana with Kenrith giving it haste. Like, just, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the haste is like so relevant. That's the one thing I was like, okay, if there's any nerf to this card, it's the fact that you can't just crack it immediately.
Wait, hold on. With Kenrith too, you can loop too, right? Because you can hold priority in
It
response to the spell on the
Requires
stack,
a
bring it
lot
back.
of effort, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, an incredible amount
Yeah,
of
it
effort.
does.
You can keep
yeah.
casting the same card. You can keep casting
Yes.
the same card, which is stupid.
If it makes enough mana, yes. I'm not sure that there is any card that makes the amounts
No,
of
you don't
mana
need to make
in
it like if
the
you're just
No,
holding it
but-
up. No, read. If
Oh,
you're just
sure, but
holding
if
it
you're
up,
just
you activate it and then hold priority.
sure,
reanimate it.
still a lot of mana, but
Yeah.
yes. I was
I mean,
gonna
we're
say
just talking
though,
about reanimating it anyway.
this
so.
is just like, yeah, like, even if this was black 2/2, no evasion, no activated ability, it would already see play. Just because one side of Rest in Peace on a bear is, like, just good enough to see play in a lot of decks. Because Rest in Peace is already good enough to see play, and Rest in Peace on a creature for 2 CMC is, like, what you exactly want in all of your, like, green stacks decks. So just, like, adding on everything else to this is just insane.
Yeah, it's still only proactive. Like it's not really, it can't really act as a trick in the same way that Rest in Peace does. But I don't think that really matters that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, dude, I'm very upset about this card. This card is
Yeah.
in the same cycle of asymmetrical hate as Drannith, Agent, Breacher,
Yeah,
and it's just
Which are
it's
cards
a
that we
trend.
always
It's obvious
hate.
that it's a trend. It's obvious that it's a trend, and that
At
we're going to
least
be
it
getting
doesn't
more
have
cards like this.
flash.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Yay!
Well, yes,
Yay,
I would like to
that's-
flash in this Voidwalker in response to your DT, and then on my turn cast it for
dude,
free.
it has. Yeah,
When we're saying at least it doesn't have flash, like that's how you know things are bad.
It's just,
Yeah,
and like, we
yeah.
haven't even, by the way, we haven't talked about like how sort of nuts this is in 1v1, where like, in 1v1 with this in a Thoughtseize deck, you're just like, alright, great, play this on 2, turn 3 Thoughtseize, you take your Grizzlebrand, cast it for free. Like,
Yeah, but also like this. Can you cast a wheel into this?
Yeah.
what, like, in
I'm
60
not-
card or in this?
In
CDH.
Oh,
CDH.
yeah, no, if this is not summoning sick, there's no way you can cast a wheel into this. Because, like, there's such a high chance that somebody just, like, discards any amount of gas and you're just fucked immediately. Right? Like,
Yeah.
No, this is crazy. Like,
So-
and I think that like it, you know, the reason I sort of said that is because I think that there's like the immediate, oh, like don't cast an ad nauseum into it, but then like there's a lot of other ways cards wind up in the graveyard, and this is like you have to be confident and like be in a good position to be willing to potentially enable this card, like with something like a wheel or
yeah.
even just like
It's-
casting a tutor. Then it's like, oh, is that like what they need to go off on their turn? Like,
Yeah.
there's so many ways this could go so wrong.
with
It's
Dauthi
interesting-
out, let's just say your opponent has a Narset. I would just cast my Wheel of Fortune. I would just I'd take everyone's hands and have plenty of void counter options.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, this thing is also great for picking off planeswalkers too, eh?
Just the shadow,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
The
also
shadow, dude.
just nuts with Timna. Like, if nobody's casting anything into it, and you have a
it's
Timna in the
not.
command zone.
It's not nuts with Timna. You don't want to be attacking with this.
No, but I
No,
mean,
I
like,
think
if,
there's- okay,
if
more-
people
there are
aren't
times-
casting
yeah,
There
there
things
are
times when
times,
it's-
right?
There are times, but
And the
like
fact
if
that
you
it has
look at
shadow
it
is
as
good.
a 3/2 unblockable,
Sure.
you're
If it-
gonna
yeah,
over evaluate how often you're gonna.
If there
be
isn't a
drawing
tutor
Tymna.
with a void counter on it and you have your vamp in hand, it's great with Tymna. That's enough, I think.
Sure.
So one thing that I think is interesting about this card is that, a lot of times the strongest win condition or the win condition in the format or like some of the strongest plans dictate the hate pieces that get run. And this seems to be kind of the opposite, where I think like something like Breach, right? People might be running Rest in Peace because Breach is really good or really strong, or Reanimator Razzacat, something like that. Whereas this card is good enough on its own that now this might be impacting whether or not you want to be running Breach or Reanimator or like whatever graveyard combo you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, this certainly
It's kind of an interesting.
this certainly has to reevaluate how good Cats is in the metagame, right? Just like
Yeah.
certainly.
if every deck is playing a Dauthi Voidwalker, like how are you gonna play Cats like consistently? Like you were
Entomb turn 1.
you already sort of have issues, I feel like, with Op Agent, and like this just only makes it worse. I don't know. Like Morgan, you can probably talk
That
more
being
to
said,
that,
I
but-
think that this is a card that Razzacats also like plays better than most decks. So
yeah,
like,
that's fair.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
obviously it affects us more. But I think it's also like a very powerful tool for the deck as it currently exists. So it'll hurt, but not like
There's quite a few decks. Well, it seems to be the trend in CDH these days that many of the decks that can play stacks effects arguably like the most optimally are sometimes still hurt when their opponents have the same stacks effect. So Razzacats, for instance, if you wanted to play Rule of Law creatures, you could, right? But you're still weak to your opponent's Rule of Laws. Similar like Urza, you can play Trinisphere and Static Orbs and all that stuff as much as you want, and then as soon as someone plays one of your like a Trinisphere, you're like, oh, that sucks. Like
Yeah, but that's a bit more that like rule of law creatures kind of aren't symmetrical in the deck, but real rule of laws are very much symmetrical.
yeah.
I also think like it's important to remember that Razzacats is like Razzacats with a Rest in Peace out is still like
A console.
CST. Like
Yeah.
obviously not the same, but it's still like a reasonably efficient mid-range console Thrasios Tymna deck. Like you're really not doing too badly. Compared to how other decks feel about having their relevant hate pieces played against them.
yeah, like a collector against most artifact lists, like
Yeah.
So next up, Reed, you can read
yeah.
these
So
because
yeah,
there's kind of a 3-for-1 here, but really it's
Yeah.
about there's
Well,
one
so,
card that's
okay,
the main
so we'll
focus,
talk
but
about-
we're gonna throw in.
yeah, we'll talk about
Reverse
this
order,
cycle
then?
at large first here, which is that so there's a cycle of new 0 CMC no mana cost suspend cards. So can't cast them for any mana cost because they don't have a mana cost, but there's 0 CMC and they suspend for some amount. I'll go through their effects real quick just so people have context. But I mean, honestly, none of these suspend like amounts or like costs actually really matter because nobody's ever using these in a fair way. You're almost always trying to cheat them off of something.
I mean, yes, but also like, sure. Well, we can discuss this later.
So the white one is called Resurgent Belief. You effectively just return all enchantments from your graveyard to the battlefield. Fine, not great, not really something that you can super abuse in CDH without a lot of effort. And it doesn't really do much past that. The red one is Glimpse of Tomorrow, a bit more interesting. Reads shuffle all permanents you control into your library, then reveal that many cards from the top of your library, put all non-aura permanents revealed this way into the battlefield, then do the same for your aura cards, and then put the rest of the bottom in a random order. It's sort of a personal warp world. Or whatever.
Yeah, the
Not,
previous
is it
one
warp
was
world?
Replenish.
Is
This
it?
yeah, I think it's Warp World. Yeah.
Is
It's
it?
Warp World, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is, I mean, it's neat, but I mean, the fact that you don't like you reveal that many cards rather than like reveal until you hit that many permanents, I think is sort of a limiting
Yeah,
factor
that's
here.
very relevant.
Definitely need to be
yes.
playing it in a deck with a lot of permanents.
Yeah, and
Because
like
if 50 or if 40 or 30% of your deck is instants or sorceries, then
you're
you're
just gonna
trading
whiff.
in your 10 permanents for like 6 random permanents
Bunch of
from your
lands.
deck.
Yeah. So like not super great. And then hey, surprise, surprise, we get into the bug ones, and the bug ones are all like enormously better than the
Super
Boros
nuts, yeah.
ones. So first of all, we'll go.
Finally, Blue's getting some good cards. Jeez.
First of all, we'll go with I think blue, which is either second or third in power level, I'd say, out of these. It is effectively a bribery. It reads search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card into the battlefield under your control, and that player shuffles. It suspends for 1 blue, which is the highest suspend cost out of any of these, and it suspends for 3 turns. Sort of interesting.
And that's called, did you say Inevitable Betrayal?
Yes, Inevitable Betrayal.
Yeah,
fun one. I think this one definitely has some amount of legs if you can consistently cheat on the suspend, just because people are playing a lot of stuff like Oracle, Dockside, just in general utility creatures,
Spell Seekers,
Hull
Eternal Witnesses,
Breacher,
Razorcats,
yeah,
Hull
just like
Breachers,
stealing
Opposition Agents,
a
Gilded
Razorcast,
Drakes,
taking a Gilded Drake.
Grand Abolishers, Ranger Captains,
Yep.
Vexing Shushers. Yeah,
There's
a lot of good creatures to steal.
Yeah, there's a wide who would have guessed that bribery for 0 mana is a good card. Yeah, not bad. Then we have green, which is also probably second or third in power level here. It's called Gaia's Will. As the name suggests, it is a Yawgmoth's Will that also allows you to play lands from your graveyard. So until end of turn, you can play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. And then if a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere else this turn, you exile it instead. Suspends for 4 turns on a single green. Also pretty interesting. I mean, green Yawg-Will is not something that I would have ever predicted seeing printed, but they did it.
What is the color identity of Yawg-Will
It's pretty
these
cool.
days? Is it
Yeah.
black? Is it red? Is it green? Like, ugh.
I think if you printed Yawg-Will these days, I mean, I guess they did just print Yawg-Will again these days, but if you if you were to actually go back and print Yawg-Will these days, it's probably a hybrid between like green and red, I'd say. Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Seems like a red ability, yeah.
Anyway, we all know how good Yawg-Will is. It's sort of fallen off because of Breach, but I mean, if you can cheat it, guys willing to play for 0 mana or whatever, it's also not bad. And then we get to the cream of the crop. Our black suspend card is called Profane Tutor. That name is already ominous and should probably give you an idea of what broken stuff this is doing.
What does it do?
Suspends for 2 turns at 1 and a black. Hey, more hints. Search your library for a card. Put that card in your hand, then shuffle. Huh. Yeah,
Oh.
so 0 mana Demonic Tutor.
So
Definitely
I want to say
a thing.
Yeah. The suspend on this one is actually kind of relevant because suspend 2.
Yeah, Suspend 2 is like reasonable
not
to
too
wait
bad,
for. It's like, it's not good, but it's like,
Yeah, it's very telegraphed,
Yeah.
but it does let you when you're suspending something. You can suspend it you can suspend it pretty early,
yeah.
and then you can also when on the turn when you're casting it, it's somewhat easier to defend because you'll have open mana.
Yeah,
So I mean, you don't want to suspend this, but this is like
No,
as a worst
but
case.
yeah,
scenario,
worst case
it's
scenario.
not
Like
the worst thing to do.
I'm much happier to suspend a Profane Tutor than I am to suspend a Gaia's Will, which is going to take 4 more turns to come
Yeah.
down, right?
Yeah. It could have suspend 10 and it would still see play.
Yeah.
But the notable thing is that it doesn't have that.
The
and
fail
you
case
can
is
still
not
take advantage of it.
actually entirely terrible.
Yeah. So what decks want to run these, Reed?
Well,
Or one?
you
or...
might have guessed
Yeah.
that Cascade is pretty good with these. So the classic answer would be Yidris. Yidris historically has played a lot of 0 mana stuff. It's certainly played Wheel of Fate, and then has sort of worked around with Jeweled Lotus, or not Jeweled, sorry, excuse me, Lotus Bloom, and
Recall or Ancestral Visions.
Ancestral Visions.
Yeah.
Certainly not bad. I mean, you almost assuredly are including the tutor there. I could also see Bribery being very good in a Yidris build.
For Dockside.
Taking Dockside, or like basically you get to take whatever piece that you're missing. You take a Dockside, you take an Oracle, whatever.
I mean, Gaia's Will too seems decent in Yidris. Like,
yeah, I think the one issue with Gaia's Will is that because Yidris is actual Cascade, you might run into timing issues where you hit a Gaia's Will that you don't want to hit, and then you just like waste your Cascade basically. Like if you don't have a stacked graveyard yet.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
And also Yidris doesn't give stuff in your graveyard Cascade, unfortunately. So like it's not as great. I mean, obviously
yeah.
Yawg-Will can only be so bad. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some builds around there running around with a Gaia's Will in it. But I think the big wins here for Yidris are Profane Tutor and Inevitable Betrayal. I think those will probably both see play. in Yidris, especially like Profane Tutor in Yidris is really good because like you cascade into it and then it gets you something else that you can then cast and then cascade off of that as well, right?
Yeah.
So like you can grab like a Soul Ring for it and cascade. The other big one, and is the reason why we have this here, and anybody that's been following me on like Twitter or Discord or anything, or has been talking to me over the last week since this was spoiled, is Cody. Cody is a...
What is Cody? This is a Strixhaven. We're also
Yeah,
doing Strixhaven.
right.
Yeah, let's what does this card do?
So Cody is a fairly recent commander printed in Strixhaven. He costs 3 colorless to cast, and is a 1/4 artifact creature. I believe he's a I don't know, construct, something like that. Whatever.
He's a construct.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that much. Interesting on his
It
face.
always matters.
So he has a static restriction on him, which is pretty interesting. That says you can't cast permanent spells. So that's pretty interesting. He also has an activated ability that costs 4 generic, tap to activate, add Wooburg to your mana pool, and then the
He's a dork.
next spell.
Nets mana.
Yeah, nets mana off of that. So first of all, so fixes mana and nets mana, which is really so. Just to reiterate
No.
before we finish this, it costs 3 generic to cast, 4 generic to activate, and then fixes your mana effectively, plus adds 1.
Yeah.
That's already
So
very strong.
It curves his cast into his ability curves like excellently, and then also fixes your mana, and
Ramps
he
you
has
by 1.
additional upside.
Yeah.
And what does that read?
That would be that after you activate that mana ability, and it is a mana ability, the next spell that you cast that turn, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal specifically an instant or sorcery with lesser mana cost than the one that you cast. Not lesser equal, and not any card type. It's an instant or sorcery with lesser mana cost than the one that you just cast.
Some people might actually think that's worse than Cascade. But also,
No, it's
hold
not.
on. Finish
Yeah.
reading the thing, and we'll talk about why it's so much better than Cascade.
Yeah.
Because there's next relevant line of text. Sorry.
Yeah. So the next relevant line of text on Cody is that you actually, until end of turn, you can cast that card without paying its mana cost. And then you put every other card exile that way on the bottom of your library in a random order, etc., etc., etc. So basically, it is not actual Cascade because it banks the card until you want to cast it. So this doesn't let you cast stuff like sorceries at instant speed, like on top of your Cascade spell, but it does let you bank it for the entire turn, which is really like good and really powerful in a lot of ways. And also
so
means
the thing where we talked about with Yidris, where we
Yeah.
said that the guys could be awkward because one doesn't trigger the Cascade with Yidris, but 2, you might be Yogg willing before you want to.
yeah.
If you, for instance, had hit a Yogg, you could just elect to not cast it.
You
until
cannot cast the
wanted to.
guy's will, but you always you have it in the bank until you do want to cast
Yeah.
it. And because Cody does say that you can cast it without paying its mana cost, you can cast these like mana costless spells, because they're
And
he'll still hit them because their converted mana cost or mana value is 0. But because he says cast without paying the mana cost, you can ignore that they don't have a mana cost. You wouldn't usually be able to cast them.
and the fact that it's instants or sorceries means that you can still run your Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, or
Yep.
your Mana Crypt, Chrome Moxes, all your 0 drops that you want to run, and not hit them and still be guaranteed to hit your spells.
Yes.
Which is insane.
So that's something that Yidris hasn't really been able to do. So like Yidris, you never really run one of the free things usually, just because you always have the chance of usually hitting like your Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, one of your Mox, and Lotus Petal, all that stuff. So you sort of want a density of things to hit. I mean, it's usually not bad to hit a Mana Crypt for free off your Cascade, but like if you're looking for gas instead of mana, you sort of have to have a density. Cody can run all that stuff and then only run, like, say, one Suspend thing or a very limited set of the Suspend cards and basically guarantee your hit on them. So the broken thing about this that makes this really good, I guess I won't say broken, but like the really good thing about Profane Tutor in Cody specifically is that it effectively allows you to just play a Demonic Tutor in the command zone that also like fixes your mana with some restrictions, which means that
It is 5 color.
yeah, it is, and it's also 5 color because the 5 pips do make it a 5 color commander. Which means that you can turn by activating Cody, you can cast any 1 mana spell, period. Now, you can't cast permanent spells with a Cody in play, so it does have to be an instant or sorcery when you activate it, unless you can sacrifice Cody somehow. But basically, you cast any 1 mana instant or sorcery, and then you just get a Profane Tutor, and you just get to cast a tutor for free. Which
So
is
what do you want to tutor
Still
for?
with
Which
four
is-
with at least 4 mana.
with at
floating.
least 4 mana floating, because Cody floats your mana and fixes your colorless mana. So just from there, we're seeing, you can. Cody fixes your mana and then turns any 1 mana instant or sorcery into a free demonic tutor. You're not casting it for its like 2 mana rate. You're casting it for free. So that means
what
that
if I curve?
you can
What if
do-
I curve 3 mana into
Yep.
Cody?
uh-huh,
Play land 4 mana, activate Cody, and I cast my Git Probe.
uh-huh.
Read what's the best thing to do?
You are cascading into a Profane Tutor, and first of all, you get to tutor for whatever you want. Second of all, Adnos is a really broken card, and you usually want to tutor for Adnos.
But I can't. He's not fixed. I can't fix my colors for Adnos.
This is true.
Well, how do I deal with that?
Fix colors for Adnos. What you're
So-
going to do instead is you're going to cast a Bring to Light, or rather tutor for a Bring to Light off of the Profane Tutor, and then because Cody adds Wooburg, you can use Wooburg to cast your Bring to Light, which then can find a 5 CMC or less spell, which is an ad nauseum.
Don't cut Bring to Light from your Cody decks, kids.
Oh, I wasn't
It's
gonna go there
important.
anyway. So this is the deck that I was talking about testing earlier. In the what we're redoing. Basically, like the concept of the deck, and it's been performing very well for the record. Even in a very hostile meta that I've been testing it in. The idea of the deck is sort of that like you get by having access to an ad nauseum effectively in the command zone. With like mana fixing and such and all the other benefits that Cody gives you. You sort of play like a turbo deck, except you don't need to mulligan to gas. So you're sort of in a place where you can just mulligan for mana and interaction instead of having to find your ad nauseum or like a wheel or like some good value card, which like really, really opens up your mulligans and also makes it so your win attempts are like far more protected than they usually are at the same at the same point in the turn, like turn cycle or turn order that you would usually get in turbo decks.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think the most obvious thing to say about this is, like, you know, how good is it to have your commander be effectively, like,
A 5-color
zero
demonic
card.
tutor, right?
a 0 card, or just be, like, a 0 card combo? And the answer is that is good enough to propel the absolute garbage pile of the 99 of Godo
Yeah.
into being a real deck. Like,
Yeah.
Like that's think about how much heavy lifting is required to make an 11 mana combo in one of the worst like monocolor
Single colors. Yeah.
shells to be in. It makes that viable. And now we're talking about like giving that to 5-color turbo Naz.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, it's still a Turbo Naz deck when your Cody isn't getting a demonic.
Yeah, no,
tutor.
you
it's
you
still
still-
a Thassa's Oracle consult
Yep.
deck. Like,
Or
it's
you
still
could
a
just-
breach deck. if
yeah,
you're on
yeah,
that,
read
yeah.
it's still a Thassa's Oracle
Yeah,
consult
yeah.
deck.
And like you're still doing Thassa's Oracle consult stuff. You can still just cast a natural Adnos without your Cody. You can still do breach lines. It's just like
So yeah. The thing with it needs Cody. You need to have Cody out of play for
Yeah, yeah,
breach and the consult. But
Yeah, I was
the
gonna
combo,
ask,
yeah.
like, you resolve your ad nauseum. What's your general strategy of like getting rid of Cody, or do you just play?
so. I mean, okay, I won't.
There's a few.
I won't
cards,
go.
yeah. We're not gonna do a full deck
Yeah,
tech on
we're
Cody.
not
If
gonna
you
do-
want to see
I
the
think
deck,
this is like the
it'll
one
be
caveat,
linked.
though. Like,
I
if
won't.
you're gonna,
I won't.
yeah.
Sorry, I'll put a disclaimer. I'm not gonna do like the full like Cody episode here, but I will say like there are ways to work around the Cody restriction. Matt, usually it involves stuff like Calling the Weak. You can run Sacrifice. You can run Burnt Offering. Nature's Claim and Creature Removal also gets rid of Cody. You can run stuff like Snapback. There are a lot of options to get rid of Cody after Adnos or before Adnos, and at the point in time the deck is currently at, it's typically trivial to get rid of Cody after your ad nauseum to win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
for saying
we'll
that.
we'll link Reed's deck list in the description for this podcast, so in the YouTube description or our podcast description if you want to check it out. Very cool. He's constantly updating it, so see where that is. And then I've also been working on a separate Cody list with Kibitson from the Frog server, and we will have that list
hopefully done by the time this podcast is out. So if it's done, then you'll see it in the podcast description. Otherwise, stay tuned and it'll be out shortly. Yeah,
That's exciting stuff.
Cool. Next up, Matt, you want to read this one?
Sure.
Yeah.
Esper Sentinel, a 1/1 for white, artifact creature, human soldier. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. So, feels like Rhystic Study, or feels like Mystic Remora, only triggers once. You can increase the cost. I'm not particularly sold on this, but I'm curious to know your takes.
This card has been contentious in the community, right? Like, people are iffy. Some people are very high.
The discussion around this card, from like my point of view, seems very similar to the discussion around Wandering Archaic when it was released.
Which is funny because I think they're like very, very different cards.
Yeah, they're really different. That's surprises me.
Sorry, I'm not saying they're similar. I'm saying that the discussion around has been very similar.
Discussion.
Yeah.
I think
that it's polarizing. That it's polarizing.
Yeah, that it's polarizing, and I think people are making a lot of the same arguments, even though they're like not really the same effect at all.
So do you guys who's on? Well, let's let's everyone give like a temperature on how they feel about this card, and then we can kind of, let's say we'll have the people want to make the counter argument, and then people want to make the pro argument. So I'd say this card is pretty good, but it's not. It's no Dauthi Voidwalker. If Dauthi Voidwalker is hot, I'd say this is like the medium hot.
Yeah, I think this.
If Dauthi Voidwalker is scorching hot, I'd say this is medium hot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think lukewarm is like, I think that this card is a solid upgrade for decks that are looking to play a bunch of like small 1/1s for various synergistic reasons.
Oh, hey, that's cool.
Sure, or like
anything
like the Esper Timna deck.
If you want cheap bodies and you don't currently have enough good cheap bodies, this is probably a reasonable idea to slot in or at least test with.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good cheap body, but it's not like I think
if you had to give a card that's a comparison of power level, what would you say?
Like Curse Catcher? I don't know. This is probably better than Mausoleum Wanderer.
This is definitely better than Curse. Well, this is also, I know this card is going to actually just raise my blood pressure an unhealthy amount because it's so easy to pay for, and people are still not going to pay for it.
Yeah, is that why it's good? Because people aren't going to pay for it.
It's just one card, right? So I can just. It's not like with a Remora. If I pay,
this is basically an Esper. Esper Sentinel is basically just a Rhystic Study under Rule of Law, right? That's the same card. And that already raises
cut to the
blood
chase.
Pressure.
Yeah.
Do you guys, Matt, you're where are you? So Morgan and Reed were lukewarm. I'm medium hot. Where are you?
I might not put it in a low color white deck, so pretty low.
So you're cold. You're ice cold, man. Okay. So do you want to go? So that was their lukewarm take. Let's hear your take.
He's as cold as ice. He's willing to sacrifice.
So what's your reasoning, Matt? Let's hear it.
It's always one. You're not neo-forming a token into this, so you're not making it a reasonable, not pay. And it's only the first spell, so I know it's gonna raise Morgan's blood pressure, but I do think there's more of a reason to pay for Esper Sentinel than there is for a single Rhystic Study trigger, just because there isn't you know that you're not gonna have to pay for the rest of the spells in your turn, so you can price it in very easily.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so easy to play around, and then it just turns into a white mana discard a card. So I don't think it doesn't connect with Timna.
Here's my take on the card. So you're right that so I agree with a lot of your points, although there's some things that I want to kind of. I think people have been comparing this to Rhystic Study and Remora, which I think you guys would all agree is not a fair comparison.
No, not at all.
Those cards are in a league of their own, mentioning this card in the same breath is just not fair to the card. And I understand why people bring it up because there's it's a tax effect and you're drawing a card, so clearly you should talk about it. No, it's not fair to compare like a college basketball player to LeBron James or something like that's just not fair. So if you want to compare this card to kind of just looking at what it's doing on the surface, I think one, it doesn't have any. It's 1 mana up front, and you're never going to have to pay anything ever again. It's a very cheap card to put into play. And so you were comparing it to Curse Catcher, and I think I can work with the Curse Catcher comparison because there's some important distinctions I'd like to bring up. So one, the Curse Catcher can have a pseudo stacks effect where you're taxing all of your opponent's like big plays and counter magic by 1 mana. So long as you're never cracking the Curse Catcher, no one's going to play an Ad Nauseam with 0 mana floating, or they're not going to play it if they've got an Ad Nauseam and a miscast and they can't pay for it.
You don't tax all of their plays by 1 mana. You tax their like turns by 1 mana. Like it's like you tap down tap down 1 land from every opponent basically with it.
The Curse Catcher, yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing with Esper Sentinel too, I think people aren't totally evaluating is one, it's that it's the first spell an opponent casts. It's the first non-creature spell each casts on each turn. So if your opponent is ever they're doing non-creature spell on their turn, and then also doing something on an opponent's turn, be that Counter Wars or something, it will tax them twice. It is taxing all of your opponents. So unless they're going to make you draw a card, it is an actual tax on their first thing, not just a virtual tax, right? So if you're taxing each opponent 3 mana each turn at minimum, each turn cycle at minimum, then also on another player's turn, it can tax them additionally. That's actually quite a significant mana advantage and tax that you're applying to your opponents for a single mana with no additional upkeep. If this card draws a single card, it's cantripped and then it's still taxing your opponents, which makes it worth. That's something I think is probably worth it, in my opinion, if it draws a single card. If it draws any more than that, it's just gas. So yeah, I actually think I think this card is quite good for those reasons. It's just something that you can play very early with little cost aside, like along with your other development plays, and then hurt your opponent's development and hurt them while interacting to potentially draw you cards. And generally the rule is whoever spends their mana the most efficiently and effectively in the game of Magic is the winner. And this card definitely forces your opponents to be on the lower end of that scale, and on the worse end, they're spending their mana less effectively. And the definite problem with this card is in the late game, it's very easy to pay for. And in Counter Wars, it's not like oftentimes with Counter Wars, they're build up on a single turn, and it's one massive stack where Rhystic Study just pays massive dividends. Esper Sentinel will not, although it still will tax each player participating in the Counter War by at least 1.
In that example, it's still really good. I think that's like the perfect example where this card's really strong is the Counter War. I do want to nitpick though your argument a little bit. I'm gonna cast an Ad Nauseam into an Esper Sentinel, but I'm like with no mana up. But I'm obviously not gonna cast an Ad Nauseam to a Curse Catcher with no mana up. I think that's a bit of a different.
Yeah,
example.
but if you do that, then it's still cantripping, right? Realistically,
I'm gonna win with a high probability versus not winning with this 100%.
No, but I mean, you're cantripping the card, so it's replacing itself for a single mana while also taxing. Then if your opponents are trying to participate to counter the Ad Nauseam, you might draw further, right? Like there's even in that example, it's not a single card. Asking your single white card to stop an Ad Nauseam is kind of a big ask. I mean, Curse Catcher doesn't single-handedly stop an Ad Nauseam. It taxes their turn slightly, right? And it doesn't help. Your opponents can't also force you to draw cards with it to help potentially answer an Ad Nauseam.
But like, Curse Catcher's also not a card that I'm in the habit of putting in my decks.
Exactly. Well, would you? So you guys compared it. You and Reed compared it to Curse Catcher.
I think it's better than Curse Catcher.
I think it's
okay.
Better
so
than,
I've moved. I
Curse Catcher.
at least moved Matt a bit, which is good.
What?
I don't think you moved him. I think it was just the Curse Catcher was obviously a bit worse than this. I think.
Matt, I think that Curse Catcher's an appropriate comparison, but that this is better than Curse Catcher.
Yes.
Like the both of those things could be true.
I didn't really kind of take in the Counter War example. I think that's a really solid one.
So Matt,
So I definitely bump it up a bit. But I still don't think I'm going to play this in a deck.
so you said you wouldn't.
I think
play
I'd
this
play this card
probably...
in
Wait,
a lot of
so
decks.
Matt, you said you probably
My
wouldn't
original
play
assessment
this
was
in like
in a
lower color white
deck.
decks, right?
Yeah.
Do you
That
think
was maybe
do
an
you,
over exaggeration?
do you think this gets like do you think that equation changes at all if you have like a reasonably consistent way of pumping it? Like say like would you
Would
you play this?
Pump this
Would you
card
play
is
this?
way better.
Would you
If
play it in
could get
Heliod?
a +1/+1 counter on it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think I would. Yeah. If
Okay.
you
The
could
card
put a
gets
power on it.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
No, I should also say I'm evaluating this as if you're never going to be able to pump
Yeah,
it
yeah,
because I think yeah.
Would
I'll say
any
I
of
think
you-
I would put this in. I'd put this into a very grindy. I mean, the QMTG meta has like TNT decks that are extremely inbred. I would put this into a TNT deck.
Would you put
I would
this-
put this into like a Thras Bruce deck.
Would you put this
In
into a
that metagame?
Kenrith deck?
into a Kenrith
Yeah.
deck? Yeah, probably.
No. Oh, and still in that metagame, like I don't know.
Well, no, Kenrith just puts counters on it, right?
Yeah, right.
Still,
Yeah,
he
that
still
just goes in
wouldn't.
Kenrith, yeah. No, I'd put it in Kenneth. Dude, he's got so many
I
abilities.
don't know that I'd
Yeah,
like I'm not saying there is not a Kenrith deck that I would put it in, but there are definitely Kenrith decks that I would not put it in.
I could agree to that. Certainly. There are. I mean, there's decks. I think I'm not saying this is like a a staple or anything, but this is a card or like a mega staple where it goes in everything that can run it. But like, I definitely think this card is staple. It depends on how far you go down into what's a staple. But this
It's
is a
not
card
a
that I
it's
would
not a
put into good
format
decks.
staple.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
it goes in every mid-range Kenneth deck.
It's like a
I
I think
you
it goes.
actually-
I think it goes in a lot of mid-range decks. Period.
it's like a
That's
like
my
a
take.
strategy-ish staple. Morgan, would you put this in Marath?
Maybe. I feel like that's a deck that like also just doesn't take a lot of advantage from drawing cards.
That's
so it's,
fair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a little bit.
I'm
like,
looking forward to
tricky,
seeing at our year in review how many decks are running Esper Sentinel and where people's opinions have changed. I mean, I've been wrong on cards before. We all have, so it'll be fun to see where.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've
It has
never
a
been
lot-
wrong on a
it has a
prediction
lot
ever.
going for it. It definitely has a lot
Cool.
going for it. So,
So
I hope you
that's
take
it
this
for
on.
our long form discussion. Unless anyone has anything else to say about Esper Sentinel.
No.
So next up is the more fringy pet deck discussion. Although pet deck might be doing this like a disservice. This is more like fringy cards that we just kind of want to talk about that aren't
viable
like,
cards. I
as
think
important.
these are
Yeah,
viable.
viable is a good way to say it. So first up, we've got Step Through, which is a sorcery for 3 and double blue, and it reads: return 2 target creatures to their owner's hand, and it has wizard cycling for 2 generic mana. So notably, wizard cycling. This is the second time wizard cycling has ever been printed. It was first on Vidalcan Aether Mage, which was a wizard for 1 and a blue with flash and bounced a sliver, which is like
So
okay.
much worse than this.
And had
is
wizard
other
cycling for
mode.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wizard
all
cycling
the
for
wizard
3.
cycling cards don't
No,
have
so
any
wizard
text.
cycling. Yeah. No, I how dare you? Tier 1 con, I bounced the first sliver with Vidalcan Aether Mage. I've also bounced Orvars with Vidalcan Aether Mage card, and also in Azami, I suppose you can flash it in to draw cards. But yeah, the notably, I think Vidalcan Aether Mage has been seeing Fringe play in some mono blue decks already, especially since the printing of a card that we're going to be getting into in our Strixhaven discussion, or like brief card discussion, which is Archmage Emeritus. It gives you access. There's lots of combo pieces that are wizards, lots of insane value engines that are wizards, disruption pieces that are wizards. So wizard cycling, pretty nice. Also the fact that it uses colorless mana and can be done at instant speed, very nice. Now the fact that this is wizard cycling for 2, when already wizard cycling for 3 with literally no text is playable, means this is, eyes are on this card now.
So,
for some mono blue decks.
I'm not sure if you saw the Sam Black article that he wrote.
I did not.
Okay, so
okay.
Sam Black actually did I believe some contract work for Wizards as like a pro player to come in and like help them work on this set a bit, and like give feedback on cards and like submit ideas for like balancing and sort of like getting cards more in line with the format. Originally, this apparently had wizard cycling for 1 before he convinced them otherwise.
Man.
Yeah.
Whoa. That would have been insane. And so, yeah, one other thing I want to say about this card that I found to be very relevant. I mean, this card's slam dunk in Brawl. But the fact that this card is a sorcery means that it is now, you can now tutor your creatures. You can do some chain tutoring to tutor your creatures in mono blue. So if you need to tutor a creature, previously, like Vidalcan Aether Mage was just redundancy for some creatures that you really want to have access to as a second copy, like a virtual second copy, but you didn't have access to Aether Mage, really. Like, the best generic tutor in mono blue is long-term plans.
Oh, dude.
That's
I
actually
mean,
a big point.
The best
or you could
generic
argue-
tutor in mono
yeah.
blue is intuition, but
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's hard to say that that's a real
So,
tutor.
Lyndon, have you
Like, you can't tutor for a mind over matter
Have you-
Sure,
in
yeah.
using intuition if you wanted to.
have you
right?
considered that instead of like if you need to get from personal tutor now, from personal tutor to intuition and
We're
Brawl?
running personal tutor.
No. But what I'm saying is, have you considered that if you want to get from personal tutor to intuition, you can now, instead of going from personal tutor to merchant scroll to intuition, you can now go personal tutor to step through to spell seeker to mystical tutor to
yeah,
intuition.
we were working out the longest lines yesterday. It's pretty fun. You go, yeah. Vidalcan, you forgot to start with Vidalcan Aether Mage into your spell seeker, obviously. No, but the fact that this is a sorcery means that you can get into your. It turns a lot more of your tutors into creature tutors. Or wizard tutors, sorry, not creature tutors, which is quite nice.
I mean, in mono blue, a wizard tutor
and
is
the
effectively a
bounce
creature
mode,
tutor, right?
while is basically blank text, can come up occasionally. So, yeah, very cool.
It'll
card.
come
I
up
like it.
that one time. There'll be plenty of stories of you casting step through for its ability. Yeah.
To remove your own Archmage Emeritus, certainly. Stop yourself from decking out.
To re-trigger your spell seeker.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have anything on step through, or we can move on? Let's move on.
Let's jump on, yeah. So
Okay.
next up, Sanctum Weaver, 1 and a green, enchantment creature Dryad, 0/2. Add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. So, if anyone's ever played Freed and those types of combos, this is a huge include because for multiple reasons, it just combos with Freed from the Real because it is itself an enchantment. It's tutorable with Enlightened Tutor. Unfortunately, it's an enchantment, so it's like one of the easiest things to kill. But just an overall great include, I think.
Yeah, notably, I think with Freed from the Real combos, this is a big upgrade because it makes X-Men of any one color. So that means that you can make double blue, which then lets you go infinite in all colors, whereas in standard Freed from the Real, you're kind of locked into infinite
really
green.
a thing that you can do
Yeah.
with a 2-mana big dork. The only one that was able to do
let's-
that before was Incubation Druid, which needs its evolve cost paid for before it can do that. So
Yeah.
notably,
you can
obviously
cast your
it also-
Thrasios.
Scales with all of your whatever enchantments, like pretty
notably
cool.
Sanctum Weaver now. If you are also playing I actually totally forgot what it's called, but if you're playing, I'm gonna find the card, and then I'll tell you the
what
meme.
does the card do?
Oh, it's the green white enchantment. Yeah, I'm dumb anyway.
Sterling Grove?
Sterling Grove, that's the one.
Sterling Grove?
You can now play
Yeah.
Sterling Grove, and it protects both pieces of your combo if you already have them in play.
It gives it Shroud though, right?
Yep.
So you can't
So then
put
you can't target it.
put a Freed on.
Unless you flash in.
It has
could
to
play
be already
Freed.
on. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I think it's. I was doing a bunch of thinking about this card, and I was like, where's the line where it becomes better than Bloom Tender? Like, for example, I think you could make a decently compelling argument in something like a Thrasios Tymna deck that tapping for double mana of any one color is better than a Bloom Tender making like Abzan off of like
Just
when you
Tymna.
have like Bloom Tender Tymna.
Yeah.
Or conceivably even like, you know, maybe you have you have like Bloom Tender. Like, is it better if you have Bloom Tender, Thrasios, and like something white? So you like double blue versus Bant. You know, like that. It's certainly like an interesting analysis of where the cutoff on being able to actually make the colors you want versus sort of being locked into like this weird smattering of colors that you don't often want to use all at the same time.
I think
and,
it
like,
also
I think that cutoff is like, I mean, maybe not with Thrasios because like their just amount of mana is so important, but like in a lot of decks, I think that cutoff might wind up being like lower than people initially sort of think of.
I think the math also gets a lot better on it though when you like go down colors from 4 color though. Like as Bloom Tender gets worse as you move down colors, I think Sanctum Weaver gets a lot better too.
Yeah, that's also true. Like in 2 and 3 color decks.
Yeah.
Are playing.
Cool. Next up, Reed, you want to
Sure,
talk
we
about
got
this one?
Tavern Scoundrel. 1 and a red for a 1/3 creature human rogue. Whenever you win a coin flip, create 2 treasure tokens. 1, tap, sack another permanent, flip a coin. Love this card. it's great.
It's very cool.
It's
Very-
super
very
cool.
flavorful, yeah.
I think the obvious thing that like a lot of people's minds are going to go to here is Kark Sakashima. I mean specifically Kark, but obviously Kark Sakashima does stupid things with this where as you're flipping coins in your combo turn, you're also like refunding mana on your 1 coin flips, and then like you actually just immediately go infinite, I think, with like a Twin Flame or something like that. Plus Tavern Scoundrel, which is or like probabilistically infinite anyway.
I think that the one like sort of weird dynamic. Obviously, this still goes in the deck, but it makes kind of a weird dynamic where, like, it doesn't actually solve the issue. It doesn't solve the issue of you losing too many flips, and it doesn't solve the issue of you winning too many flips. Because when you lose too many flips, that's when you run out of mana, and when you win too many flips, that's when your cards don't go back to your hand. And it actually doesn't solve either of those problems. But obviously, like,
it's sort of
assuming you're
but it
getting
helps with the tip in the negative direction, I think. Like if you're still winning some number of flips, then this will pay for.
But like most of your spells are like at worst mana neutral, so if you're winning like 1 out of 4 flips, you're fine anyways, right? It's
But what I'm saying is like with your copy spells, this makes it a lot easier to go off, right? Because if you're just like winning, like
it's also just good with your
winning
commander,
like
though,
1
overall,
flip,
right?
then you're going infinite, right?
Yeah.
It helps you get off the ground,
Also,
and
it's
it
just
also
mana that you get to bank,
just
really,
from
too.
just for a value player, right? Like just refunding your mana sometimes when you double your
Oh,
spells.
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
no,
it's just nuts. Yeah.
It's definitely
And the
a
colors as
very
well.
very strong card in the deck. I just like I found it a little bit interesting that like I think that it actually perfectly like doesn't solve either of the like it doesn't solve either of the like the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
Right? It solves like it makes it easier to just sort of play, but it doesn't solve either of your like your failure cases, I would say.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, that keeps the deck interesting.
Yeah, if Kark Sakashima ever becomes like a linear like A plus B combo deck, I think I'm just done. Like I'm just it becomes
I don't
so
wanna live
much
in that
less
dystopia.
playable just because it's not interesting anymore.
And then Reed, you had another.
Yeah, so
interesting
the other
description.
interesting thing with this is that Tavern Scoundrel is actually an A plus B combo with Frenetic Efreet, because Frenetic Efreet lets you flip an arbitrarily large number of coins, with no downsides for losing coins aside from just losing it, but if you already have an infinite number of them on the stack, then whatever. So you can make effectively infinite treasure tokens a vast majority of the time with them, both. Which is actually interesting because they're both creatures and their CMC adds up to 5 mana, and Tavern Scoundrel is a sack outlet, which means Hulk time.
Oh my god.
So this is actually sort of interesting. I haven't done a lot of testing with it, but I think in Kenrith Hulk, where you're already sort of doing like you're doing hulky stuff, but you're also doing some stacksy stuff. It actually functions really nicely under Rule of Law when you already have a Kenrith out, or if you don't have a Kenrith out already, but you like did some activated ability shenanigans to get the Hulk to die. It's a good one. Yeah, and it's also you can pile a Sylvan Safekeeper in with it so that they can't actually mess with it anyways, because there are some like niche ways that you can actually interrupt the combo if you like wait for the Frenetic for free to lose a flip and then die and then kill the Tavern Scoundrel so it doesn't see the rest of the coin flips, and then they can't.
Okay,
add
I have
any
to
more on
object to
top.
calling a removal spell a niche way to interact with a Hulk pile.
Well, yeah, sure. I'm just saying that, like,
cast a
if
removal
the
spell
wording,
targeting
if
one
the
of the holocaust
wording
pieces,
had
you
worked,
interact
if
with
the
it.
wording on Frenetic Efreet was a bit different, like, you wouldn't need the removal protection. But since it does need the removal protection, it's nice that you can pile in a Soten Safekeeper with it. And then you just make infinite mana anyway, or infinite treasure actually, which is actually a lot better. Which means that even if you can't cast another spell, it's unlikely that
just
people are
do
going
it
to be
and-
able to like just completely shut off all your treasure, because you'll be able to
Play
use whatever's
this
in your
Bane of
hand.
Progress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the actual danger would be Collector Roof, but
Or Dockside.
or
That's also a
Dockside of
problem.
their own. But I mean, it's still
No, you just take all your treasures with Kenrith and turn them
It
into
is-
+1/+1
it is
counters.
still a lot better than IMO anyway. It's nice under Rule of Law specifically, because it means that you can just like bank your mana, and then you can just like whenever you have the outlet, you can just use it then. So that's pretty interesting.
For sure.
The other thing with this is
So-
also same set. Usury Fortune's Flame is being released. We're not going to read it because it's
Okay,
a
there we
mess
go.
of keywords and like words and stuff. But
It
it's
gives you 5 flips a turn.
yeah, it gives you 5 coin flips a turn just for attacking, and it's in the colors, so it's certainly going to be fun in that. Where the best case scenario is like either Usury gives you an omniscience, or like you just get like 8 treasures or 10 treasures or whatever off the Tyrant Scoundrel. So
Cool. Matt, this is your card next, I believe.
Yeah, just a quick point to this. So Sithis, harvests hand, green and a white, 1/2, for a legendary enchantment creature, nymph. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain a life and draw a card. So just one of, the best like enchantress type commanders you can pretty much play. Yeah. It's exciting for people who like enchantment decks, I guess.
Cool. Next up, it's my card, and this is Grist, the Hunger Tide, which is a legendary Planeswalker Grist for 1 and black green. Has 3 loyalty, and it has a static text, which is as long as Grist, the Hunger Tide, isn't on the battlefield, it's a 1/1 insect creature in addition to its other types. It has a plus, which is create a 1/1 black and green insect creature token. Then mill a card if it's an insect. If an insect was milled this way, you put a loyalty counter onto Grist and repeat this process as a -2. You may sacrifice a creature. When you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker. -5. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So the relevant part of Grist is that it's a creature anywhere outside of the battlefield, which includes on the stack, by the way. So you cannot Force of Negation or Fierce Guardianship this card. But the relevant thing is I will be testing this in Gitrog as well as some other things because of some of the cards we talked about earlier, notably Dauthi Voidwalker. Gitrog has been kind of getting shit
just
on
absolutely
lately,
fucked by the asymmetrical hate.
printing of Dranith, Opposition Agent, Hull Breacher, and then Dauthi Voidwalker. Everyone's going to be main decking Rest in Peace. So this is just it turns all of our creature tutors into a way to answer these asymmetrical stacks pieces, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and then I guess the plus it has some cool things. So Oko is sometimes played in like grindier decks, and then if you Oko Gitrog, that can be a massive pain in the ass. Grist is kind of a succinct answer because you can minus sack Gitrog, kill the Oko, kills Narsets, which can sometimes be hard to remove for Gitrog. Tutoring the tutor removal stuff like the Ashiok, Op Agent, Mind Sensor. Obviously, the benefit of being able to tutor Grist kind of gets negated by those unless you're doing it in response, like a Whirly Tutor in response or Survival or something like that. And then there's a cute little thing with the mill where, if you've got Gitrog in play, which can protect Grist fairly well, you can plus, and then if you mill a card, you mill a land, you draw a card, and then you can repeat his effect potentially, which is, yep. So it's just we're not running it because it's a good value engine or whatever. We're running it because it's a highly tutorable piece of removal.
Also,
and in green black, there's actually not that many. Like in white decks, you could run Skyclave Apparition, which just solves so many more problems than Grist. Unfortunately, we do not have that, so we are forced to run.
Oh my
something
god!
like
If you
Grist.
mill your Caustic Caterpillar,
you
the
get an
dream-
extra mill.
you get an extra mill value.
Also of note, Grist
Cool.
is our first non-humanoid planeswalker. I'm pretty sure. As
It's a
in
massive
in
bugs.
card form. It is just it's a bunch of bugs.
Also, the art is super dope.
Oh yeah, I mean the art for all the versions actually, because I think it has some alt arts. All pretty sick.
Cool. Morgan, your card and the final one in the category.
Yeah, my card is Dress Down. And it is an enchantment that casts for 1 and a blue. It has Flash. When Dress Down enters the battlefield, draw a card. Creatures lose all abilities. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Dress Down. So it's like a 1-turn humility. But it draws a card and it's 2 mana. So like I know we've talked a lot about the meme of like stifle. You can stifle Oracle triggers and Dockside triggers and things like that. And you know, like activations of various commanders. Dress Down does a lot of that, but it also draws a card, and that's like a very important distinction.
Kind of reminiscent of Shadow of Doubt then in that
yeah,
sense, right?
it's kind of like Shadow of Doubt. It's a lot easier to cast because it's not 2 colored pips. And it just like there's also some, you know, quasi interesting things you can try and do with it if you have like ways to
Stifle the
because
trigger.
it's a permanent. Well, stifling the trigger doesn't. It's like it triggers every
It
end
gives you an
step,
extra turn.
unfortunately. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I was looking at it. You can play it in the end step in Muldrotha, which is kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Because it doesn't sack
and
until
just,
the
like,
next
blank-
end step, so...
And just like blank the next person's creatures.
Also,
but
if you
yeah,
have
like-
if you have a way of winning without creatures, you can flash this in your like opponent's end step right before your turn, and then it'll persist through your turn.
Yeah, it also like it gives you a chance to deal with stuff like Razaketh. Like obviously it doesn't solve the problem because they still have a Razaketh in play, but you know, they reanimate Razaketh, you play this, then you can try and remove the Razaketh somehow, without them just being able to like tutor answers in response. It deals with Hulk. Yeah, it's just like it's certainly not going to be a staple, but like it's an interesting like I like cards like this where it's like it's slightly less generically useful than like a lot of the interaction that's run, but it has like this added benefit. So if you have a deck that's like trying to solve specific problems and also wants the value of drawing a card, might be one to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, I've seen people suggesting this in decks where I don't think it's actually that good. But you know, a lot of the cases where you just brought up are actually pretty interesting. Like I don't think this is like a mono blue staple or anything. Like the fact that it doesn't permanently answer the creature, and then often when you're wanting to answer a creature, it's just not doing anything. It kind of just turns into that like stifle that's drawing a card, and that's
It could be
not what
sort
I
of
think mono blue
cool
wants to
in
be.
like non-Shimmer Mirror Zerd builds. So like if you're just playing like pure Doomsday Zerd, this could be sort of interesting. I guess
Yeah, I
it
could
sort of
see that.
messes with your own Oracle, but I'm assuming you might be able to find ways around that or
You
stuff.
could pile through it.
I'm
yeah.
assuming. It's just like sort of
Um,
interesting there, and just like something that you can get with a Zerd to deal with a bunch of rule flaws or stacks effects or whatever.
Cool. So, and then finally we have our menu covering of some Strixhaven cards.
It's sort of like a
I
Strixhaven
know we've had multiple-
retrospective rather than a review, since
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
had these cards legal for a bit at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. We have the hindsight. So all of these have been kind of speculation on what we think how the cards will play out. And the Strixhaven lets us. We've had some experience playing with these cards, so we can actually speak using actual experience, which is awesome. But yeah, we just haven't had the opportunity to talk about Strixhaven that much because of the way our episodes have been scheduled. So, and also like it would be like a mini topic anyway. There's not that much to cover in Strixhaven. But yeah. First up, I guess I'll start first. We've got Flamescroll Celebrant / Revel in Silence. It's a dual face card. So Flamescroll Celebrant 2/1. Basically, the front side is irrelevant. It's except for the fact that it costs for 1 and a red, and then the back side for double white. Your opponents can't cast spells or activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities this turn. Exile Revel in Silence. So it's another silence if you're in Boros colors, but casting for double white,
Bit
which
rough,
is honestly
you know.
it's pretty good.
It's.
I mean,
it's fine.
I do think it's worth noting that like Flamescroll Celebrant is a hate piece against like certain combos.
Yeah.
Bomberman, Scepter combos, like Dockside, like Team of Sabretooth,
Like
Emil,
or something.
whatever. Like so it can be situationally relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, Reed. You said it's rough because Silence is a playable card in good color decks.
Yeah.
Which does certainly. The thing is if you're in non-blue and you're in need of protection, Revel in Silence if you're
It's
in the colors. Is
fine.
something to
Like
definitely
it's.
look
I
at.
think you probably just go
Yeah.
to Grand Abolisher before this, and Grand Abolisher is like already hard enough to cast. So I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
want
it's not
this,
really-
but it's like, yeah,
There are already plenty,
I think the different.
there are already kind of
Yeah.
plenty of creature tutorable silences too.
it's just
Doesn't
yeah.
really
So I
fit
understand
in.
where
I
you're
mean,
coming
like
from. and
Mardu.
that, like,
Mardu, I think this
there's
is
a
a
dis-
decent.
I get
Mardu
that like there's a disruptive element to this as well that isn't there with Grand Abolisher, but it's like
which I value.
you
pretty
might
highly,
have
actually.
enough. I like personally.
Honestly, I think the real comparison is that it's just so much worse than Ranger Captain of Eos.
Oh yeah,
Yes, yeah,
I-
it's significantly worse than.
I will say that like obviously I've like this in Cole, but that's just because like it's a hate piece that you can stick and then clamp it and get back a silence afterward.
Oh
But
my
like,
god, I just realized something. I didn't mention that Esper Sentinel is Ranger captainable. What am I doing? Oh my god.
oh yeah, dude,
Gosh.
in your
Yeah,
in
I
your four
almost
color
said
deck,
that.
I almost
In
said
your
it, and then I was
four-color
like,
deck?
you know what? No, I'm just.
get cast Ranger
we're
Captain
already
in your
Strixhaven,
four color
man. You
deck
can't go
for
back.
1 white, and then get your white casting 1 drops for a total of white
Yeah.
white 1 in your 4 color
Yeah.
sword deck.
Dude, just play Jubilation or play Angel of Jubilation. Why not?
Okay. Next up, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Culling Ritual. 2 black-green sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost, or just mana cost 2 or less. Add a black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. So I think the kind of theorized way of playing this card was to cast a Culling Ritual and then a Mnemonic Betrayal and kind of recast everyone's permanents. The kind of 2 combo, right?
I mean,
I thought it was with Pier, wasn't it?
what
Pier and Nas.
it honestly like doesn't matter hugely what you're casting off of it as long as you're making some reasonable use of the mana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know how bad it feels to just like wipe everyone's crypts and like wipe everyone's fast mana, slam Thrasios and activate it once or twice, or like slam Thrasios and Timna, or like
Yeah,
whatever.
I've certainly been impressed by
I mean, that
seeing
doesn't
Calling
seem great.
Ritual cast, like when it resolves.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them try and like get countered.
Yeah,
honestly,
I've seen a lot of them not resolve, which I think meaningfully is like
That means the card's pretty good.
look at how your opponents vote. You know, it's like see how people vote with their wallet or their feet or whatever. Yeah, how do your opponents vote with their counter spells?
What kind of decks are
Um,
casting this spell though?
A lot of like
Like
peer
Nas,
stuff, peer decks, Nas
combo
decks.
decks, yeah.
Ikram is on it right now, which is like, you know, I think a lot
But
of
do you
people
just get to
can
the point where like do you just get to the point where you have your artifacts and creatures in play and then it's not worth it anymore? 'Cause
Well, that deck
That's what I was
doesn't
gonna say.
really
In
play
green,
a
it
lot.
could be a problem.
It
yeah.
like specifically Ikram, which a lot of people would place in like probably top 3 decks in the format right now. Doesn't really play a lot of stuff that it actually cares about going away, especially if this is resolving. Just because you have like enough mana that it doesn't matter anymore in your cast
Yeah, like,
or your ad
if this resolves and you have the actual payoff spell, then like wiping everyone's artifacts and enchantments is, or like everyone's, you know, mana accelerants and whatnot is like a price you're willing to pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can clear the like stacks effects that might be hindering you, like
Yeah.
null rods.
I mean,
or
it's
something.
certainly difficult to cast this
Troops.
under a null rod, considering it's 4 mana, and you're not guaranteed to have the mana to actually cast it if something's messing with your mana. But like when you can, it's certainly a great way to like unlock a bunch more mana, right?
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I think card is clearly powerful, but you don't. It's not like a green black staple. Like I know we had discussed this in Gitrog a bit. It's like we're not running Pier. I mean you could cast an Eldrazi Titan.
We're definitely
But like, or you could play Gitrog and combo using that excess mana, but it's not like obvious that this card should be in
We're
the deck,
definitely
especially when
playing
you
it
wanna
in
have a bunch of under 2
Virals.
CMC mana.
Yeah, we're definitely playing it in Virals right now, just because I mean, hardcasting a Holocaust of Culling Ritual is pretty nice, and you have enough dumps for the mana in the
Yeah.
deck that like it's reasonable just to play it.
Yeah.
Clear some hate pieces. too,
Quick
which is
tip
nice.
though, casting Culling Ritual into Razaketh, not actually that great. I've seen a lot of people suggest that one.
I've got all my 3 CMC creatures out though.
I'm not saying it'll never work.
Yeah. Cool. Next, we've got Witherbloom Apprentice.
We do.
Sure.
It's yours.
So, Witherbloom Apprentice is a 2/2 human druid that casts for a green and a black, and it has Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So, like, if you think about it, right, over the course of a game, this could be draining your opponents for, like, 10 plus life, just, like, really putting pressure on their noses, and...
Yeah, basically 2 CMC gutter snipe, dude.
Yeah, so...
Huge.
I mean,
so
over the course of the game after you cast this, I can imagine it just killing people off of casting spells, right?
Yeah,
so...
absolutely. Flusterstorm, huge.
So, obviously,
Actually huge, though.
The thing with this card is that it combos with Chain of Smog. Chain of Smog is target player discards 2 cards, then they may copy the spell. And unlike all the other chain cards, there's no cost to copying the spell, so you can just target yourself and then just keep copying it. You have no cards in hand, doesn't matter, keep copying it, and since Witherbloom Apprentice triggers on the copy, you kill your opponents by draining them out. This combo has been compared to a lot of things, many of which I would say are wildly inappropriate.
Golgari.
I'd say probably
it just makes sense. Thoracle Consult is an A plus B. This is an A plus B.
Probably the closest
Easy.
comparison I'd
Therefore.
say is Bomberman.
I was gonna say, yeah, Bomberman is really close because it wrecks your hand.
I mean, it's
super
they're both
interactable,
4
yeah.
CMC. They both just absolutely wreck your hand. Like,
But the one thing is actually Bomberman is actually more resilient than Witherbloom Apprentice because it can't. You can restart it if there's a counter spell on your LEDs, right? If you have enough mana. Witherbloom Apprentice, you can't.
Yeah,
if they wait till you're hellbent and then they counter your Chain of Smog, you're SOL.
Yeah, like there's not really a way in Bomberman that you wind up with both pieces and your entire hand in the graveyard. And like, yeah, you can play through, if they try and counter the LED, you can play through that with extra mana, which like often they're forced to just because it's hard to counter creature spells. Also, in terms of the removal that Witherbloom Apprentice dies to, there's actually like not a lot.
Freaking everything.
There's not a lot that kills Auriok Salvagers. When compared
and there's
to
not a
Witherbloom
lot
Apprentice,
that doesn't kill Witherbloom Apprentice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Also, it's super vulnerable to all kinds of I guess it's not the copies of dodge. Like if you develop the Witherbloom Apprentice and try and Chain of Smog in the same turn, it's weak to Rule of Laws. It's weak to all kinds of it's like weak to basically every form of counter magic. It dies to deflecting swat and misdirection. It's a super weak combo.
It's actually insanely good to have a deflecting swat versus this combo because you both take one opponent completely out of the game and then you just double discard another
also
opponent.
mind rot an opponent
Yeah.
for value. I think that
this combo should not be played.
also this is, if you have more life than your opponents, you can actually just win the game on the spot if you have a way to stop the combo, because you just wait for your opponents to, like, you wait for your opponents who aren't playing Wither Chain to die and then stop the Wither Chain, and then it's you versus an opponent with no cards in hand.
Yeah, and then also both halves of the combo are kind of just crap cards.
Yeah, so I mean, this is like one of the things though that people were talking about was that like Chain of Smog isn't actually terrible in Gitrog Monster because it is technically
No, it is.
It's technically a discard outlet for the deck.
Not really. It doesn't. You can't actually loop it without running into slow play.
Sure, but I mean, it's like, so I think the one place that I've sort of liked Witherbloom though is like in decks that, like, in low color green black decks that like just need a second win,
which is
not a lot.
Is there even one example?
Yeah, not really. I mean, the other
briefly considered it for Muldrotha, where like, the downside is somewhat negated, but
the other sort of place for it is that like reasonably you can play this in like non-blue Adnaz lists where you like don't have good compact post-Naz combos to actually win the game, and like it's the sort of like the risk of doing it post-Naz is sort of mitigated because most people would just counter the Adnaz. So like you're only,
I think that's
really
the only
dead
legitimate example.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, okay, I do also have to say, like, it is a 2-card 4-mana combo.
Yeah,
like there is a floor it's obviously like a very vulnerable combo, and like getting stopped is worse than it is with a lot of other combos. But like there is a floor on how bad a 2 mana A+B, especially one that doesn't require activating any abilities, can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
In
doesn't.
terms of combos that if your opponents are completely tapped out and have no interaction at all in their hand, the mana efficiency is nice, but otherwise I think it's just terrible.
It's definitely one of the best combos that I'm never gonna play.
Yep. And with that,
Yeah.
this is
Actually,
also a Morgan.
You can. This
Yeah.
was your card you want to talk
Yeah,
about as well.
yeah. So this is a different card with Magecraft. It's Stormkiln Artist. It's a it's a 2/2 dwarf shaman, casts for 3 and a red. Stormkiln Artist gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control, and Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. So this is like a lot of mana to get online and get going, but once you do, my goodness,
Yeah.
is that a very powerful effect. Like, it's a colored Helm of Awakening at the very, like, one-sided colored Helm of Awakening at the very worst, and then when you're just banking the treasures because like you don't need them, it gets insane. If you have anything that copies spells, that could be Flusterstorm, that could be like some, potentially like a Krark, or like I've been playing it in Calamax, then like it just starts to get out of control unbelievably quickly. And like, even though that deck isn't actually playing a huge number of artifacts, or the version I was on wasn't, like I think I was on like 8, there were a bunch of times where like I just have Stormkiln Artist, and then I'd attack with it, and then someone would be like, "How much am I taking?" I'd be like, 9.
Yeah,
Like,
just a bunch.
it's just a whole bunch.
I think it's nice
And,
for just like specifically decks that have like pre-existing like synergies with copying spells or like they like copy spells just off the cuff.
Or treasure synergy.
Yeah, it's
like
also
summon
like
treasure synergy.
very
Corvold or
nice.
something.
It's very nice for like decks that wanna, for whatever reason, wanna be casting cards across multiple turns. So like also something like a 4-color Rashmi, I could see where like instead of having to hold up 5 mana to like cast a spell on each of your opponent's turns, you just kind of get to like bank some treasures and refund them across multiple turns. Rather than like things that make a whole bunch of mana all at once that are like really only useful for casting a bunch of spells in a main phase.
Cool.
So, Lyndon, would you like to run through your Brawl Gauntlet real quick?
Yeah, I'll stop at the final card.
Great.
I'll run through three in a row, and then someone else can get the last one. Cool. So first up is Resculpt, which is 1 and a blue instant, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. They printed Raven Form in Call-Time. That was a 3 mana sorcery that did the same thing, but made a 1/1 bird instead. The ability to remove artifacts and or creatures, specifically artifacts in mono blue, is actually kind of lacking, and this is a really nice tool. So played in Brawl. I also have been just slamming it in like all kinds of different mono blue decks because there's actually lots of artifacts that can stop you, and you just have a difficult time removing them outside of bounce. And a permanent way to remove them is nice. Next, Archmage Emeritus. For 2 and double blue, it's a 2/2 human wizard with Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. This card has been insane in Brawl, but also in other decks that I've been looking at and brewing. It's the card advantage that this thing generates is almost unparalleled. I think if you can make this thing work, I am manually drawing through my entire deck to get a Thassa's Oracle using this card. I've done that multiple times. It's insane, and then sometimes the win condition is literally you're getting decked by your Emeritus because it's not a May. Your opponent's win condition can be you decking yourself. So, if a card decking you is a problem and something your opponents are looking at, that kind of speaks to just how insanely powerful this card can be. And then I guess Morgan, Reed, you guys have played against me with Emeritus. How does it feel to see an Emeritus on the opposing side?
usually pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean,
but I feel like
it's better than Rashmi.
the true the true demonstration of its absurd draw power is that I was playing a game with on Team Turn 3 with Reed and Pongo, and there were just a bunch of rule of laws in play, and I was playing Orvar, so I was dead in the water. We all knew we were going to die to Pongo eventually. So I went like, I wonder if with Orvar and Archmage Emeritus, under a rule of law, I can deck myself before he kills me. And the answer was absolutely I could. Like, I was, like, just drawing it draws so many cards so easily.
It's just a meet your
this,
mono blue
there's memes about
stable.
Yeah, there's memes about blue ad nauseum. Oh, it's recurring insight, blah blah blah, different things. The real blue ad nauseum is Archmage Emeritus and Flusterstorm.
Wow.
Yeah. The key to me drawing my deck several times has been Archmage Emeritus, Flusterstorm, draw a bunch of cards, then remand my Flusterstorm to my hand, and then Flusterstorm again. It's like,
and the copies are all like half
blue ad
eluding
nauseam.
through Baral because one copy, like one counters the other, and then yeah.
Oh yeah, it's dope. Okay. Next card is Solve the Equation. So for 2 and a blue sorcery, search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So this card is just really freaking good. Not just in Brawl, but in all sorts of mono blue decks. The one thing that's interesting is I think people are maybe overvaluing Spellseeker unless you're taking advantage of the body or like the fact that it's like tutorable or a wizard somehow. I've seen decks still clinging onto Spellseeker but not running Solve the Equation, and that's just not correct in my opinion. The cards serve, like, at base, Solve the Equation is a better card for its mana cost and effect. But then unless if you want to take advantage of what Spellseeker is doing, then obviously Spellseeker comes out. But definitely look at, if you're running Spellseeker or you're looking for more tutors, look at Solve the Equation and see how it fits into your deck. This card is just excellent.
Yeah, and it finds Step Through, which finds Spellseeker.
Yes,
so
it definitely does find Step Through. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emeritus is like one of the biggest reasons why you'd run like Step Through or Vidalcan Aether Mage. This card is just, I'll tutor for this card all day, every day. It's insane.
Yeah.
Cool.
Next up we have
I think
final one.
Yep.
I think that this card is like of the 3 mana like type restricted reveal tutor sorceries, I think that this one's probably the best.
Oh yeah.
So between like Idyllic Tutor and Fabricate and like that sort of stuff, I think that this card is like just so much more flexible than either of those, and those are both cards that have historically seen play in like the low color decks that care about that permanent type, and mono, or like that card type, and mono blue decks as a general rule tend to care about instants and sorceries.
Cool. Our final card, whoever takes it first gets it.
Yeah, so this is the one that like has sort of had the most discussion going around it from Strixhaven, I'd say. This is Wandering Archaic, 5 mana for 4/4 creature avatar. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2. If they don't, you copy that spell, or you may copy that spell rather, and then you may choose new targets for this copy. It's also technically a flip card with an instant sorcery, or sorcery on the backside. Doesn't actually matter. It's bad. It's like some bad group hug sorcery.
I've cast it once.
Yeah,
in
it's
Brawl.
bad.
Yeah. And I whiffed.
So this one is sort of interesting in that, like, it was, when it was first spoiled, there was a lot of discussion around like whether or not it's actually good enough to see play in a lot of decks. The fact that it's 5 mana definitely sets it back a fair amount. But I mean, it being a creature, you can tutor for it in a lot of green decks. It's like asymmetrical. You don't like, there's no deck building restriction to having it in your deck. There were a lot of comparisons to stuff like Seaborn Muse just because of the mana slot and like the nature of its grindiness. I think the main arguments were between like whether or not it would actually be a relevant enough ability, because obviously the whole thing is that it's a one-sided like double Thorn of Amethyst until it's not, like until somebody casts something that gets by it or something like that.
No, so I want to jump in on that if that's okay, because I've seen that comparison a lot, and the card that would be a comparison to that would be God Pharaoh Statue, which is literally just a asymmetrical Thorn of Amethyst, double Thorn of Amethyst. Not Thorn of Amethyst.
Sphere of Resistance, but
Sphere. But the one thing I would like to point out with this is that when you're doing that, it can have a sort of similar effect to playing a defense grid and passing, where if your next opponent, like people are passing the turn on the assumption that they're going to have a certain amount of mana untapped and available to them. And then if all of a sudden that calculation gets changed because you just played a double sphere of resistance, you can be handing the game to the next player who has enough mana to play their Thoracle Consult through the double sphere.
Or they're playing like something
now,
like
Wandering
Hulk or
Archaic is actually much different.
Or they're playing something like Hulk or
Or
something that
play
just
something.
like doesn't really care about taxes.
Exactly. Yeah. Now the Wandering Archaic is actually and so then tapping out for something like that would not be advisable because then you're becoming the solo player who's reliant on doing that on interacting. Now Wandering Archaic is actually much different because it is optional. So and you get to control how things are being copied. So you're always going to be taxing the player who's trying to win. And in not just taxing them, but you are going to be being a boon to the other players who are trying to interact.
This
so
is
you
the
can
other
actually
side.
assist the interaction.
This is the other side of the argument, which is that the idea is that Wandering Archaic taxes the player attempting to win and then doubles up on the interaction that's interacting with them. It's sort of like how like Trinosphere works in Urza, where Trinosphere is on and it's on while you're casting your tutor and then like your whatever ritual that gets by it and then like your 2 win pieces, and then it's off as soon as like anybody has time to interact with you. So like it's your stuff's 3 mana, that one's 3 mana, that one's 3 mana, that one's 3 mana. If you've like spent 12 mana to cast your like 1 CMC combo pieces, and then it's off and everybody else can cast interaction without paying for the Trinosphere. Like Wandering Archaic has a very similar thing going with it, where it's like, yeah, it's on for you all the time as the person trying to win, and then it's both off and is actually like doubling down on the amount of interaction coming your way when somebody is trying to interact with you.
So yeah, I think the comparison to Seedborn Muse is maybe not doing it justice because Seedborn Muse is kind of a much stronger card. But the effect that it can have of you get to play your threat, develop it, and then also be able to interact or hold up mana on your opponent's turn. Well, you're not actually holding up mana using the Wandering Archaic. You do get to contribute towards stopping your opponent. So it is a somewhat reasonable threat to tap out and play for, with the exception that people might want to counter it. Wandering Archaic, I've been impressed when I see it in games so far.
Oh, I definitely haven't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, I like wasn't super high on the card to begin with, and I don't think I'm not gonna say I've gone down on it, but I've seen it go to a lot of effort. It's obviously like it has an enormous Gilded Drake me painted on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just there's like a lot of things that can go wrong when you play that card, and like it's a 5 mana card that doesn't do anything until your opponents decide to let it do something.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
there's
I
definitely
think your opponent's deciding to let it do
there's
something.
There's definitely issues with it
that's not a quite
that I've seen, like versus decks that don't necessarily leverage instant and sorceries particularly well and are doing like a lot of like artifact or creature based stuff instead. Where like if you're winning with primarily creatures, like Modern Archaic doesn't really help with that much, aside from like sometimes doubling up on interaction.
Yeah, I think you run it because of the doubling up on interaction and then taxing like tutors and stuff. That's about it. I think it plays a lot better when you actually do have counter spells that you can use to potentially, stop Gilded Drakes, and then if your opponent's trying to fight back, you can get that tax effect. But yeah, it's not like a flawless card. It's definitely got problems. But I've been impressed. I don't know how to. I think it's decent. I don't think it's like all-star is how I'd put it. Cool. So that does it for our 2 set discussions, not reviews. Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
huge.
I think I missed the discussion. Is the only reason we're calling them set discussions and not set reviews because we said we weren't doing set reviews anymore?
Correct.
Basically, yeah.
But don't call us out.
All right, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page as everyone else.
The first thing that happened this episode was Lyndon called us out.
Okay, so yeah, that wraps up the main topic, which means it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Gut Check.
Good shit.
Yeah, check.
Gotcha.
Loving the energy as always, Morgan.
Everyone showed up. Yeah.
So this week's Gut Check is for each other person. You need to say what deck feels the most theirs, right? Like when you think of them, when you're thinking about the other members of the podcast, what deck is theirs?
Yeah. So it's Lyndon Muldrotha, Morgan Hulk, and
Do we have to say? Is it like
Wait,
is it like a
from you.
named deck?
What do you mean?
Like
The commanders?
like commanders,
Plus
strategy,
name?
like named list.
I was gonna do for myself. I was gonna do commanders / like named
Okay,
deck,
all right, cool,
or
cool,
like it
cool,
doesn't
cool.
like
Yeah,
strategy kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
I can confirm we have not done this one yet.
Okay. So I've got mine, and I think they're the same as Matt's.
I think we all might have the same ones, but
Rut-row.
that's fine. I got mine locked in. I think.
These are tricky questions. Some of these are tricky. Some of them not so much. But
Ready.
Okay, so after some deliberation, everyone's got their their choices. So I'll start. My choice for Matt is Mono Blue Teferi. Obviously, like he played Teferi for so long. And one of the first decks I ever saw him play was Mono Blue Tron, which kind of feels like thematic to Mono Blue Teferi.
The natural progression
Yeah,
in the commander, yeah.
Reed, I'm very tempted to say Varol's Hulk, but I think it's just got to be Shuffle Hulk. Yeah, you just that just screams you to me. And then for Morgan, it would be Muldrotha.
interesting.
Yeah. It was between Muldrotha or Maresil, but Maresil's your casual deck, and I just thought I'd stick with the CDH theme.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah. Okay, Matt, you're up.
Sure. Well, for Lyndon, you guessed it. I put Godo. I'm just kidding. I put Gitrog. Classic Lyndon staple.
Yeah.
But you know what? You've been talking about other decks recently, and I'm proud of your transition. You know.
Yeah.
Just kidding. So for Morgan, I have Muldrotha as well, but I would rather put Cats because I feel like Cats is more like your version of Cats is like gotta be the best one. So I think that makes you kind of own that. And then yeah, Reed, I had Shuffle Hulk. Without a question.
Nice. Yeah, it's just the one. Yeah, so I had Lyndon on Gitrog, obviously. Matt, I actually had on Thras Bruce. I felt like you were having a lot more fun with Thras Bruce than like any of the mono blue stuff that you had played. And for as long as I've known you anyway, you played it for probably the most out of anybody. And for Morgan, I think I would actually split between like the current Morgan deck, which is Muldrotha, and what I think is overall. So
Wait, what? That's the current me deck?
yes,
Yo.
Because I played like 3 games
Because you
with
played it last
recently.
night.
no.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm actually gonna say like I'll say the overall Morgan deck. I think it was I'll probably say Kess.
You know what, man? I don't know. You may have played that deck.
I
for a long
I
time
don't know.
And, like, really
I think
tuned
that's
it,
like the.
It doesn't scream,
but I don't think that really matches your personality or like how I think of you
I
as a
agree.
player.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I don't know. I still sort of internally think of Morgan as a Kess player, IMO, which is a player that is very
You should take offense to that
conservative in when they hold up interaction and is very easy to bully and likes to yell at me when I make his life hard by sandbagging. And that just screams Kess to me.
Dude, I remember the exact moment that Morgan decided he was going to make Kess, actually. It
one.
was
I don't.
in the car, driving driving Liam back to the base, I think, on the way back in the car, we were talking about decks. I think Morgan was like, he essentially said like Kess had pretty much just been spoiled, and I think he's like, yeah, I'm like looking at Kess, and I kind of want to just make a storm deck. I'm like, cool.
Well, no, because I built Maris. I don't think it had
late.
just been spoiled because I built Marisil first. But then I was like, yeah, I have Kess, and then I remember, Matt, you like pulled out your like box of good cards that you weren't using to like supplement the cards that I had, and then we were just like sitting at our table putting together a Kess deck.
Nice.
I was tempted to say Marisol because I think Morgan answered this because this is what I felt to be true. I don't know if this is actually true. If Marisol was like was more competitive, would you be playing Marisol in CDH? I feel like the grindy playstyle and just absolute misery that you inflict on your opponents.
I think that like if Marisol was more competitive, it would not be in the way that Marisol is like. I have it
the
built
way that
in
you like to play
casual.
Marisol.
I like okay. I do see how like, picking Muldrotha for me is like the whole like inevitability aspect. But I think that like that is a thing. I feel like that's a thing that I care about more in casual than I do in competitive.
If Daxos were playable in CDH,
Absolutely,
would you play Dax?
Okay. Well, so I guess now here I have to come in and shake things up. So
I'm excited.
For Lyndon, I put Anafenza. And the reason I did that, the reason I did that is because I think that you really enjoy the, like, one of the things in your decks is like the challenge of internal tension is something that you like actively sort of like seek out, and you try and find and optimize these decks that are like, I'm playing stuff that ostensibly interferes with me, but you know, it's worth it because of these reasons, and I can play around it in these ways. Plus it captures your spirit as just the dirtiest metagaming scumbag on the planet. Mr. I didn't put Reverent Silence in to counter your Daxos enchantment deck. You know, that's Anafenza's just
I
bad in
truly
spirit.
didn't. I truly didn't. But I just didn't know better.
For Matt, I've got a bit of an oddball, which is Elsha. And
Nice.
I think that like that kind of commander that's like both value engine and combo piece is something that I sort of associate with you and the way you've played. Like that was true to an extent of Teferi. It's obviously true in your like infinite mana combo sporting Thrasios deck. And I feel like of all the decks I've ever seen you play, Elsha was the one that you were most disappointed that like you couldn't really make work very well.
Yeah, Elsha was like so nice on paper, man.
Yeah,
it has everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I activated top and saw 3 lands too many times.
And then Reed, you get Shuffle Hulk.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Shovel, it was custom built to represent me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the fact that like you had been playing D&V beforehand, and like honestly, I feel like saying Virals would also just be like, because I feel like that's the root, right?
Oh yeah,
like that's
Virals is the root cause,
right? And it's come full circle. Yeah, we've come full circle. So like honestly, I could see changing my answer to Virals, and also just because I have Virals holds a sentimental place in my heart as my first true CDH deck. So. I guess I honestly, one thing I actually want to say before we kind of close out the show is give what does anyone think that like one of these answers actually represents them the best, or have they changed their view, or like did someone not say something that they think is actually true to them? Because I think after Morgan said Anafenza, I think that pick is actually top tier. So like I would change my internal answer to Anafenza if that's, you know, after hearing Morgan's justification. And then Matt has 3 different decks listed for him, so I'm interested to see what he.
I want to be known for natural ordering and exclamation, so Reed wins.
Yep. I knew it. I knew it.
Reed, you have Shuffle Hulk,
Yep.
Shuffle Hulk.
Definitely do.
Which one?
I think anybody that's known me for any period of time just knows that like it Shovel Hulk fully represents what I'm about. That deck was,
Honestly,
yeah.
when Lyndon said Shovel Hulk, I considered just before Matt or I had even said anything, just filling in the table with Shovel Hulk. Like I just made a little table to track our answers for when we do like when we actually release the episode. And I was like, yeah, we all know what's gonna happen here.
And Morgan, what about you?
I don't know. I like think
Curveball us, and it's really Hullen.
Honestly, it might be.
I was also considering like just like Teamer in general. I feel like it's an ongoing
actually like
passion.
It's not Teamer. No. That's just a
like,
meme.
This question has been posed to me a few times and in a few different ways, and like particularly recently when I haven't played, like there was a long time where like Kess was the deck I'd played more than anything else by like a hugely wide margin. But now that I like haven't played it really as much in the last 2 years, I actually don't know. Like I see why you guys said
he's a lost soul.
I see why you
Who
guys
am
said
I?
Jotha, because like there is that element of like me and inevitability, and some of that's like that's captured even when I don't play decks with it. I think I capture that in the way that I play a little bit.
It's also the deck that kind of like got your name out, I think. A little bit,
yeah. But like obviously it's not a deck that I've played nearly as much as like some other things. And yeah, I don't know. I really don't.
It also just highlights that, you know, sometimes Morgan is just a Timmy at heart and wants to play big creatures.
Yeah.
And Reed is the exact opposite and just likes winning.
And Reed's the worst. They need a psychographic profile for being the worst.
Yeah. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoNorthPod, via our email intonorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. And extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/intonorthpodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, if you use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description, a portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast. So please do. Go bookmark it or something. It does help. And thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor Manta Ray Hat. The next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see you.
Bye.
Peace.